Going to the air again. That pass is high. Oh, what a one-handed grab by Pearsall. And then he took a pop at the 30-yard line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
There's a slant on first down. Catch made by Coleman. Dion Coleman, his first touchdown as a Seminole.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Youngblood, the man in motion. Simon feels the pressure. Hit as he throws. Intercepted. There he is, Cooper DeJean. And he's got some space in front. DeJean still on his feet across the 25. DeJean is going to take it for a pick six.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Penix looks the other direction down the seam. It's intercepted by Sanders-Still. Mikey Sanders-Still has a couple of blockers. A convoy. Michigan set up inside the 10.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
WKU will mix up tempos. Reed throws on the run, complete sideline, missed tackle, and this could be big. Hilltopper's on the way. It's Malachi Corley. Goodbye. 70-yard house call.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Play action, McMahon looking to fire to the end zone. McCaffrey on the run. Touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, I did include Smokey in the open today. One, because I didn't feel like changing it for just a day. And two, because it's his birthday. So he's taken off. We've started kind of that tradition of giving ourselves a birthday off. Garrett didn't take his right away because we were at the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. Mine was like right after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, right after the Super Bowl. Craig's was a couple months ago. Mine was just 2 weeks ago. And Smokey's is today. But he will be back tomorrow. I believe he's celebrating his birthday by getting the most out of Medicare. I think that's what he told me. It's like
Thanks for reminding me that it's his birthday, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, he is. I'm kidding, of course. Yes, happy birthday to him. But yeah, I think he's celebrating the Medicare victory lap that he can now go on.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to see doctors he didn't have problems with just to get the money out of Uncle Sam when you can. You put it in, you need to get it out. So
right.
I might go see an OBGYN when I hit 65. I mean, he'll be like, I don't know what I can do for you. I'm like, listen, I don't care. I just want you to charge the government.
Right, yeah. Just get your money's worth.
I feel like I paid for it. You want to put me in the chair, put me in the chair. It's your problem, not mine. But, Craig, yesterday at the end of the show, kind of an interesting comment came out from the head of the bowl season. Is that college football bowl season, or what do they call it now? And he basically said that they are hoping for collective bargaining because in collective bargaining, that means that postseason games and bowl games and a lot of things can be contractually worked in and obligated to so that good players stay for the bowl games. Now, there's a lot that goes into that I think some of it is a little bit wishful thinking on his part, but I do think that collective bargaining can help solve that problem of guys not playing in bowl games.
Yeah, I mean, this came out kind of as the show was winding down, or I guess right afterwards. Nick Carparelli, who's the executive director of bowl season, is what it's called. Had some interesting comments on what they can do to try to curb opt-outs in the future and ensure that the best players and the majority of teams' rosters are competing in these bowl games. And I know bowl games have kind of taken a little bit of a hit in terms of their popularity, and just in general, I think there's definitely a feeling that there's probably too many of them and whatnot, but they still have their place in the game. We saw the positives to it. I mean, the Pop-Tarts Bowl and all the fun that brought there for a couple of days. And obviously the big bowl games with the big ramifications are always going to be, must-see TV for most of us. So, they still have some compelling angles, but the bigger, broader swath of the entire postseason, is like anything else in college sports right now, sort of in the crosshairs of change. And tradition has managed to stick around in some cases and even return in some cases, like A&M and Texas this upcoming year. But in other ways, it is being rattled down to its core, if not outright changed. And so bowl season is one of those things you look at and you say, all right, how could this possibly change in the future? And we've seen, like, Florida State just threw up the white flag after not making the playoff and half their roster, and I'm exaggerating, but
not really.
Not by much. Half their roster just said, we're dipping. We're going to go prepare for the NFL draft or whatever. We're going to protest, by not playing in this game. And so if you're, Citibank or Hooters or whatever sponsor there is for these games, you're not paying for the third string quarterback unless there's been injuries. You're not paying for the fifth string safety to be the starter unless there's been injuries. And so these opt-outs have created a bit of a dilemma for some that aren't the biggest on the food chain. And so, his idea is that through collective bargaining and conversations with Charlie Baker and some of the commissioners that, eventually they're going to have those collectives when it comes to NIL get brought in-house, and the payments will be in-house. And there's those conversations have revolved around as well the signing of contracts or agreements, if you will, to basically ensure that guys will play in the postseason. And they will be rewarded for it, of course, because you're going to get rewarded for everything from participation on nowadays. But that's what they're working on, it sounds like. And it sounds like there is some possibility there. I saw Dennis Dodd. I think he was reacting to this story, but he just kind of popped off a couple of random tweets. They weren't really quote tweeting or like adding on to something. But he brought up, contracts and how all that's going to work. And I get there's a legal side to this. I just tweeted out last night, it makes too much sense of just like, hey, let's sign these guys, ensure they play in the bowl, and we move on. So, of course, there's got to be like the Debbie Downer of like, well, actually, first of all, you'd have to collectively do this, and then you'd have to do that. So there are some steps you would still have to take. But point being, all these issues, they've got to work on them now, and they're not going to have the solution right away. And this one in particular is something they need to figure out, because otherwise bowl season is going to be in a very precarious situation if you're not one of the playoff bowls. And so signing contracts, guaranteeing postseason participation, those types of things have been floated out there and are being discussed in exchange, of course, for NIL and perhaps other things as well. So, that's what they're working on right now.
I mean, there's a lot of like, things they have to, cross like on this bridge here. Like it's kind of or obstacle course, if you will. Like one of the obstacles, like, and the big issue is that now that you have a 12-team playoff, when you had a 4-team playoff, it didn't affect the bowl games really at all as far as interest in the rest of them for a while. Like, but then as more opt-outs happened, and then we hit critical mass this year with Florida State. We just did. And while Georgia did not have a ton of opt-outs, they actually happen to have a bit of a younger team. They still had a couple. But that was kind of lucky on Georgia's part, because, look, had Georgia had the same kind of seniors that Florida State had, that game would have been, like, all backups against each other's. But they didn't. And so that, especially being a New Year's Six game and being so awful to watch, because FSU was, quiet quitting, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't even so much quiet quitting. Yeah, they were loudly just saying, we're protesting or whatever. Yeah,
I mean, that was just their way of doing that. But how relevant, or how much interest will there be in the bowl games once the 12-team playoff, or even then a 14-team playoff exists? Like, how much do people really, really care? And when can you make those games? Like, I think I did a top 5 about it, 6-7 months ago, when the whole 12-team playoff finally got, kind of down the road, was Like, one of the things you may have to do is, and this is a wild out there thing, is that you kind of have to add week 0 every year and make that the bowl games, because otherwise that's the only way that you could fit it into the calendar of having these two teams play each other. You essentially reward them with a game at the beginning of the next season, because if you have opt-outs and all these other things and people aren't watching on television in January or December, then might as well be better just like, okay, you guys can play another one next year. But again, I know that has its own problems.
Yeah, definitely.
That has its own problems. I'm just saying that, like, right now you've got a situation where the Bowls are, I'll use the word, they're at a crisis point, because if you've got people not playing in them, and they're not playing in them and opting out because they're just trying to go to the NFL, they're also trying to maybe go to the next school. So if you're at FAU and you win 7 games and go to a bowl, but you have 2 stud wide receivers and a defensive lineman that are all going to get in the portal, well, then, like, the best players who would have been in that game who got you to 7-5 are now not going to play because they're trying to go to a better school, and they've already gotten calls from Alabama and Tennessee and schools like that. So, yeah, it's a big problem all the way around, and there's no easy solution to it, except for, I guess, collective bargaining is the straightest line. But even then, like, how much are you going to be able to keep some of these guys, like, in, or like, what are the rules going to be? Because there's still going to be some guys that are like, look, I don't want to play in the Poinsettia Bowl because, I'm going to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, and I don't know how much those bowls are affected by this as much as I think they're looking playoff-wise, and I think the playoff having more participants is going to, and I think it was even mentioned in that article, it should increase the amount of participation, because Georgia's not on the outside looking in last year. If they were this year, it would be they're a part of it, and they're in a playoff game. And so Florida State, same thing. I know that's the most glaring example. They would not have probably had as many opt-outs because they would have been in the playoffs. So just in general, the playoff expands, and you're going to have more teams involved in the eyes of the people in charge. That hopefully is what answers some of this. And I don't know how much you're concerned about some of the other bowls. I mean, I think that they're obviously on the tipping point of being like on the endangered list, potentially, seeing where all this goes. How many people do care about the Poinsettia Bowl? Well, the people in the Tourism Bureau in that city, wherever bowl you want to mention, they care a lot. That matters. The sponsors care a lot. And so I think what's happening here is the sponsors are getting nervous because they pay money for, it's like the example you use, like you pay for the Rolling Stones, you pay to see Mick Jagger, and you pay to see Keith Richards. You're not paying to see like the backup B group of the Rolling Stones, and so that's something that money will probably solve, like everything else in college athletics. Ultimately, is the money portion of this will answer everything. But the Bulls are smart to be proactive here and to be worried a little bit about what the postseason looks like in the world of an expanded playoff, because we really don't know what it's going to look like. We've never seen it before, so it's all brand new territory for everybody involved, and we may see less opt-outs because Georgia's now suddenly in the playoff, Florida State's now suddenly in the playoff. I think that would be guaranteed that a lot of those guys would have stayed in. But would there be guys who go like, look, I'll play in the first round, but I got to start getting ready for the draft in the second, like by the time the second round rolls around? Those are the things we don't really like have an idea on right now. So they're trying to figure out solutions to those potential types of problems. But again, it will likely resolve and roll back around to money. Now, the contractual part of that, again, that gets into that sticky area where we know that's not necessarily the route that schools want to go down, but I don't know how many off-ramps they have at this point. So, I think in general, the postseason is something you look at and you go, how different could this look in about 5 years because of all the changes in the playoff? And, for me, I kind of watched the biggest bowls this past season. I didn't pay probably as much attention to the lower ones. I don't think I did that really for any particular reason other than just be maybe a little bit busier this past Christmas season than I was the couple years prior. But I still enjoy watching them. I also know that if like one or two were to fall off, I don't think I'd necessarily notice or be all that upset about it. So, I feel for the bowls on one hand. On the other hand, I think like you've been kind of overly bloated anyways for a while now. Maybe this will kind of correct that as well. But that's just another, add that to the to-do list of things to try and figure out.
Yeah, I kind of think they should BCS rank like the top 50 teams, and that basically gets you to 25 bowl games, and that's a nice round number, right? That 50 teams would be in bowls, and that's how it would be, I think that gets you through. Like, you got 12 teams in the playoff, that leaves, like 19 other teams. Well, yeah, I'd probably, 12, 38, 19 other games there, so 38 other teams that can play games. Maybe that's it. Garrett, you have a quizzical look on your face.
I'm just thinking. So when you were talking about that, how you would take the top 50 teams or whatever. Do you think there's an appetite for, instead of bowl games, you have like an NIT with the remaining team that comes out? Like, would that draw more attention than typical bowl games?
I mean, it sounds a lot like doing the FCS playoff or the what was it, the FBS, right? Secondary play, or FCS secondary playoff, like that. No, well, modeling after the FCS, doing like the secondary FBS playoff. I think the thing with that, Garrett, is that all of a sudden you're asking like Toledo fans to possibly play another 2 games and travel around the country, and just like how much infrastructure and money and things would you have to do to set up like another tournament? Let's put it this way: any idea? If they can make money off of it, like good money, it's possible. Any idea where you're like searching for where the money comes from to answer all the questions, probably not very likely. So, I mean, it's a good idea. I just think you can also over-tournament yourself to the point where everybody's in a massive tournament, and it's just like, what in the world? And it maybe even takes away from the other, ones that you're wanting to have more people focus on. But, yeah, they do need to think about the bowl games, and they're kicking the tires on it. But, again, it rolls around to kind of the same words, NIL, contracts, those types of things. So those folks in the nice suits and the suites and the fun bowl games each year are all like the rest of us in trying to figure out what comes next and what that looks like and how you can potentially solve some of these issues before they become bigger issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. It's just like there's a clash coming. I mean, or it's here, where you've got to they've got to make, and the thing the bowl season's worried about is eventually everybody's going to pour every out of energy they have into promoting the 12-team playoff.
Right. Then, we really don't know, we don't know what bowl, I know it might just be like, who cares about the Poinsettia Bowl, but thing is we really don't know what the bowl games look like after this new playoff. Like, are people going to care as much if they're getting a 12-team playoff to kind of satiate their appetite in December and January? I don't know. Maybe everybody still, 200,000 people watch the whatever bowl on Thursday mid-morning and everything stays status quo, but we're not really in a world right now where anything's staying status quo, so I think you have to have your head on a swivel. So they're I mean, I don't want to say smart, but they're just being logical and looking at this right now and not letting it be like a tsunami that's all of a sudden on top of them, and then bowls are drowning and don't have any idea of what to do next. You got to be proactive.
Look, there are kickbacks that got to get paid in a lot of these towns.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, too, where I know a lot of people are feeling sorry necessarily for every bowl committee out there, because there is some of that to a lot of this. And so at the same time, I do know there is tourism dollars and things like that are important and that do matter. And let's not also allow the fact that a bunch of big schools in this big playoff that we're having, let's not let that take away from a Toledo making a bowl game and that being an important thing for that football program, or a Baylor next year if they were to make a bowl game. Like, man, people might not care about the Armed Forces Bowl, but for a program like that, like, they would need that. They need that. Just making a bowl game used to matter, and I'm not old man get off my lawn, but I think it still does matter for certain programs, because not everybody can go be in the playoff every year or win and compete for a national championship. So sometimes, like, just winning that Texas Bowl, like Joey McGuire a couple years ago, Texas Tech needed that, man. That was a big deal for them, just to have something to celebrate and rally around and have a trophy in the case. And so there's still a place for those games, I believe, but I do think it got a little bloated and a little greedy, and so now there are some things to figure out that you didn't have to worry about necessarily for these last several years.
Absolutely. All right. Before we go to Scott Docterman from The Athletic, who's our first interview guest, then we've got Max Olson at 4. He wrote a little article that ruffled some feathers in Boulder, Colorado. Then we've got Josh Neighbors at 4:30. Then after that, we'll do Craig's Off the Radar. Mickey Spagnola will, help me through the Cowboys draft as much as he can at 5:25, and then
is he
top 5.
Pro Zeke being back? I'm sure he is. Mickey's pro
I think
Cowboys.
it's Look, the good thing is it's great for that locker room. Zeke's like the locker room guy. And if they have a good plan, it's fine. But they've already done this before at wide receiver where they decided, like, hey, we don't need a number one. Like, we'll just, spread it all around. Mm-hmm. And then halfway through the season, they were 3-5, and they said, let's go give up a first-round pick for Amari Cooper. So I think we know how this story ends. And I'll ask him that question. Like, same thing. Like, this exact, administration has gone through this before. And I know that maybe they don't feel comfortable and they've got salary cap issues, but they're going to have to maybe white-knuckle it through in the running game this year.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm sure he'll be positive about it and say basically what you said is just it'll be running group by committee, basically, and maybe that works, maybe that does. You don't have to have Bijan as your starting running back to win a Super Bowl necessarily.
No, look, the Chiefs didn't but they held Pacheco who's like a game breaker.
It just feels like you're going backwards is just what it feels like. So it's a weird sense for Cowboys fans out there. But anyways, I look forward to hearing from Mickey.
All right, real quick, Brett Yormark yesterday said, and he said this to us before he said it to everybody else. They wouldn't even need to ask him these questions. They just watched our video on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a 40-minute interview with the guy just over a month ago. And he reiterated that the 2028 look-in is important. He was satisfied with the financials, but he was not happy about them because he thought they could be better. He thinks all the coaches and administrators in the Big 12 feel the same way. And then... what was the other thing he said? I got to go back and look. I've already blanked on it. He also said that the Big Ten SEC partnership he thinks is overstated and that the two conferences have the bulk of control over the future format, but he thinks that the relationship between the four power conferences is as sturdy as it's ever been.
I'll start on that last point. You'll have to remind me about the other two. I don't think that Brett Yormark's dumb enough to trust that's the case. I think he's got to say what he's got to say. At least that's what I'm hopeful for. I can't imagine, though, that just based on everything that's out there publicly that he's really – they may be getting along better than ever. He's also got a very short window of time that he's talking about. He's been on the job for less than 3 years now. So that's what he's comparing it to versus, 10 years of meetings to go off of. But – he's a smart guy. I don't think he's like a genius that knows everything, but I do think he's smart enough to understand that you got to play nice and there's no point in getting nasty. I mean, I don't know how that benefits you at all for him to come out and be like, I don't trust those guys. I know they're just waiting to slit our throats. And I mean, I don't know what that gets done. So, I think he's playing his role the way you should, get along with everybody, but I think also be ready to pull out your own weapon if you need to and be ready for the point where you might have to swivel a little bit. But for right now, you're positioning yourself as being obviously by default the fourth of the Power Four, but arguably the third of the Power Four. Now, you're not going to be the second or the first unless you go rack up a bunch of national titles, and that's going to be harder to do than ever before because now you have even more playoff games. But I do think the Big 12 is in a nice position. I do think they're obviously in a much better position than the Pac, and they are in a position where I think, the ACC is clearly on uneven footing right now, and the Big 12 sitting there right there licking their chops for the next move, whatever that might be, whether it's 2 weeks from now or it's 2 years from now, whenever things get opened back up. The Big 12, I think, is going to be sitting there ready and waiting to gobble up whatever they may want that's sitting out there and available. And obviously, I think any talk about Florida State going to the Big 12 is nonsense. Mm-hmm. I think same thing with Clemson. I just think it's utter nonsense and clickbait to think that those schools are going to go to the Big 12. And that's just my opinion. I don't see why you do all of this to end up in the Big 12.
Yeah.
All these court appearances, all these millions of dollars you're spending to end up in the Big 12 and not even close the money gap. The whole point is to close the money gap. The whole point is to make the $40 million extra dollars that your rival Florida is making or your rival, whoever is making, South Carolina. It's not to go still be $30 million, $40 million behind and not even be playing those schools. Like, what sense does that make? It makes zero sense. So I don't believe that for a second. I believe the Big 12 would be all over it, but I just don't think it's realistic in any way, shape, or form because It doesn't make any sense to do that. But there is the possibility that, if things fall a certain way, the Big 12 could stand to gain, and I think they've got to be ready. I think we've talked about it before. Of a Louisville would make a lot of sense for them, and there's a batch of other schools that you can kind of sort through, and I think it depends on who you talk to. Some people might rely on this set of information. Some people rely on whatever other information they rely on. And, you can see a million different scenarios of Louisville and then so-and-so and Miami and so-and-so and how that would all work. But they definitely are in a position where they can just kind of sit back and not have to be as active as they were last summer and like just rattling the cage. They don't have to rattle anything. I mean, it's all getting rattled for them. So, I think that they've got to be in a position to spring when they need to. But for right now, there's no need to rattle that cage. There's no need to rattle the cage of the SEC or the Big Ten. All you can do is go out there and just be the best you can be. As silly or plain Jane as that sounds, that's what the Big 12's got to do. So they get along with the SEC and Big Ten. There's no point in getting into a pissing contest with those two because you're not going to win that.
No, absolutely not. All right, when we come back,
what were the other two though, real quick?
Oh, the other two was just reiterating that he was happy with the look in. He told us that before,
and that goes hand in hand with the realignment part as well. Potentially, if that cracks open around that time period of 28, then they'll have the ability to renegotiate if the conferences change again. We've talked about that quite a bit. So, that's nothing new whatsoever. None of this was, like you said, I mean, he talked about all these things in our interview with him back at the Big 12 Combine. But for those who are just hearing it for the first time, I think what he said is logical and makes sense. And they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's, and I think they're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Scott Docterman of The Athletic wrote a column today about where the Big Ten stands after spring. We went through all the Big 12 schools individually. I figured we would maybe do more surgical strikes on larger targets with the other conferences. So Scott Docterman will join us next. Also, we'll get his opinions on the NFL draft. He's a draftnik as well. Since we're 5 days out from the end of it, he's always got good information on that. That's next. This is the triple option. Jesus, this is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, Also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Scott Docterman of The Athletic joins us now, and Scott wrote a very comprehensive article today on where the Big Ten stands as spring football has come to a close. Quarterbacks, portal, recruiting, all of that. Scott, thanks for hopping on the show. Let's start with the quarterbacks and with Ohio State. Will Howard was supposed to be kind of the running away starter while they let the young guys marinate, but that's not necessarily the case coming out of spring, is it?
Yeah, it was really interesting when you see Will Howard coming from Kansas State. You thought, okay, he's going to take over, and it means that probably 2 quarterbacks are going to hit the portal. Well, that never happened. That was really surprising because I think, number one, Will Howard, while being a very good player at Kansas State, had a lot of competition this spring at Ohio State. Devin Brown, who was their number 2 last year behind Kyle McCord, had a really good spring, and there was some anticipation that he was going to leave. He was going to leave, Ohio State and transfer, but he's right there in the thick of the competition. And then there are two of the best freshmen in the country who are kind of down the list. Julian Sayin, who transferred from Alabama after Nick Saban retired, and then Aaron Noland as well. So they've got a really heavy competition, and all of them seem to be locked in it. So I would say Will Howard is still the odds-on favorite to be the head coach, to be the quarterback. But then after that, I would probably go with Devin Brown being right there at the end.
Scott, I was just perusing through your article earlier, and I was curious, just off the top, of what's it like to have to regularly write Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA and take account for their position now in the Big Ten?
Well, I was just getting used to Maryland and Rutgers, and now you add these 4 to me. And honestly, I think the most difficult and challenging part is, especially this year, is now having to go back through those teams, what they did, what they lost, go through the portal, go through the NFL draft, see how they competed last year. I mean, I was pretty aware. I mean, they were obviously Oregon and Washington were outstanding. USC had the worst defense we've ever seen, and then UCLA has had a lot of ups and downs. But outside of that, it was still a challenge, and especially I think Washington might have been the most difficult because once Kalen DeBoer left for Alabama and Jed Fish joined the posse up in Washington, there's been so many players that have left via the portal, and so many players that ended up in the NFL draft. It was really hard to try to track down some of what has been going on there in Washington.
So when it comes to the quarterbacks as well, I mean, there's a lot of coaching changes as well that you track. But Michigan State, I mean, they're turning it over, baby, and they bring in Aiden Scheidels with Jonathan Smith. Obviously, that Oregon State connection. Just what have you made of the early days for this new era of Spartans football, and the impact that getting a guy like Childs to at least command the offense can have, and just kind of what are you expecting right now when it comes to Sparty?
I think it might be a challenging year for Sparty to lose 48 players out of the portal, and a lot of those players have been were walk-ons, of course, and some entered the portal and left and then went back in it. But to have that much changeover year after year over year, that is going to be awfully difficult for them to put a roster together. I mean, we saw that with Colorado, that the first 3 weeks were great and the rest of the season was not. And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with, possibly not to the same high-profile extreme as Colorado, but when you're bringing in that many coaches or players for a new coach like Jonathan Smith, you've got to have kind of a learning curve, and there's going to be some challenging games for them. They play Ohio State, they play Michigan, they play Iowa, they play some other really good teams. So I would expect them to struggle, but also Aiden Childs does have a lot of talent. And if they get in a situation where they could get to a bowl game and show progress, then I think they've got an opportunity to have success, big picture. But this year, narrowly, it's probably just going to be, hey, fill out a team, compete, and hope for the best in some of the games where it might be 50-50.
Where do you think Penn State stands as we go into another year, Drew Aller at quarterback? And this is a team that's really good unless they're playing Ohio State or Michigan or somebody of that echelon. How do they get out of the rut that they're in? Because James Franklin, for all intents and purposes, one of the best coaches in the country, but he kind of operates and lives squarely on the second tier of coaches and programs right now.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck in a little bit of a purgatory, and now that they're freed a little bit from that, being out of the East Division where they were behind Ohio State and Michigan every year, that now they have an opportunity to kind of break out of that. They do have some big-time games. I mean, they're going to play Ohio State again, but they're the only team in the new look Big Ten that doesn't have a protected rival. They like being unrivaled, and that's what they are. And but I think this year they have the team that is very much capable of running the race in the Big Ten and winning it. I mean, I think you look at all the quarterbacks returning that that they have probably the best one. I mean, he's 25 and 2 touchdowns. Last year, Drew Aller was 25 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, was terrific in some games, but then in the big games, he wasn't quite there. They have a couple of really good running backs. They lost their best receiver in the portal, but they still have a really good defense. I think Abdul Carter is going to be tremendous off the edge, and but they have to get past some of those games. Now, I'll say this: the standard is changing for some programs, and Penn State will be one that benefits from this. Because before, if you didn't get into the playoff in your team like Penn State, it was kind of a failure. But now you get into the playoff and they would have been in the playoff 5 or 6 times probably if it was a 12-team playoff. So they have that opportunity to get in, and then then we'll kind of see where they fit in the world, whether getting to the Final Four that way is palatable or if it's still kind of the loser's mentality. So I think right now they're in that. They should be in the top, considered one among the top 3 in the Big Ten going into this year.
Scott, what did that mean? I know that the conference stuff can get very tribalistic, especially these days because of all the realignment and everything. But what did Michigan winning a national championship and obviously the Big Ten's got all the power they need already, but what did that mean just for the conference, like in general, for it to not be Ohio State and to be Michigan for the first time in such a long time?
It's I think people are looking at it in different ways. I mean, every conference likes to beat their hands on their chest and say, hey, we're the best. And you've seen that from the SEC for, a couple of generations now, and they rightly so. But I think with the Big Ten and having it be in Michigan, it does show that, hey, we're not just one team that, every now and then, gets lucky, but just makes to the championship and wins it. And Michigan for the 3rd straight year got to the playoff and this time won it. But there is still a lot of animosity over the spying scandal, and there's not a whole lot of love for Jim Harbaugh in among the Big Ten, and so I think they were kind of like, all right, we won it, but that just you feel wrong cheering for them, and maybe if I would say, well, maybe if it was somebody like James Franklin, they'd feel differently, but they feel the same way. So yeah. I guess, yay, Big Ten, but it had to be him. That's probably the way both teams feel.
Speaking of Michigan, though, they lost a lot to the NFL draft, Scott. A lot to graduation. Look, J.J. McCarthy was the quarterback who got them over the hump. Now they're in a quarterback battle. How much can we really expect of them in the follow-up year?
I think they're going to be very competitive. I don't know that they are good enough to be in that. They might be on the outskirts of the playoff discussion this year. I think if I was to kind of label it in tiers right now, I would say Ohio State, Oregon, and it's hard to say that anyway. Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State would be probably my top 3, and Michigan, probably Iowa, maybe, probably the next two, and then kind of go from there. But they have a really good defense coming back, and I'm sure they're going to be fairly selective and good picking out of the portal. So they're never going to put themselves in a position like they were under Brady Hoke and being a bad team, a bad program for a while. But I would expect, to see them probably 9-10 type of wins this year, which for a lot of teams, they would accept that. For Michigan, I think they would accept it this year, considering what they did last year. But it's still, I think they're a couple steps below. I think Ohio State is clearly the class of the conference right now.
I know we can't ask you about every team because that would take an hour with the way these conferences are set up now at this point. But we did cover Matt Rule for several years here and kind of know how he operates and know that year one was, let's get it all kind of reorganized and rebuilt and all of that. And now heading into year two, they got a young hotshot quarterback. Whether we see him at the start, Scott, I know is still a question mark, but it seems like they have momentum. Do you feel momentum around Nebraska football, or are they kind of just in that sort of purgatory where they've been the last, several years now at this point?
I think they've always been capable of making that step forward. They'd have everything you want as a program, and they always have, to be successful. They just haven't done it, whether it was Scott Frost, all of his issues. Then last year it was offense, which was really strange because in the years past it was defense. I do think that they're more than capable of being a competitive team in the Big Ten in year two under Matt Rule. And if Dylan Raiola can take them forward as a quarterback, then I think this team is probably going to get to a bowl game, which it hasn't since 2016. Can you imagine that, saying something like that 25 years ago with Nebraska? But that's kind of where they are. And they seem to be momentum there, but it's almost like every year they win the off season. They're the program that hey, we're back, we're going to finally be there, and then they don't. So there's a lot of skepticism, but I also think that eventually they're going to break through, and Matt Rule's probably the guy to do it.
You've covered Iowa for a very long time. What is the new look offense look like at Iowa? It's a
work in progress right now, I would say. They had some issues with injuries still because Cade McNamara, their quarterback, who came in last year, tore his ACL. He's not all the way back, and they didn't have anybody else who could really. They had a couple of guys, one transferred out who was the backup last year and didn't do so well, Zeke and Hill. They had a couple of guys kind of running the offense. There were some pluses. I think the running game looked a little bit better. It was going against a really good defense. They brought back 6 guys from there were 6-year guys on the defense, so they decided not to go to the NFL and come back to Iowa, so they're going to be good there, and that's kind of hard to judge against. But there's going to be a little bit more motion. There's going to be more a better passing scheme, which I think a lot of us could do better than they did before and when it came to schematics. So I would expect Iowa to take steps forward there. The question is, can Cade McNamara and Tim Lester, the new OC, do they have enough receivers? Can all those three, if they can all work together and produce a moderate passing game with that defense, they've got an opportunity, I think, to be competitive for a playoff spot because they have. Last year, they were number 1 in the country in yards per play allowed, and they had 200 more snaps than number 2. So they do have a defense that's more than capable of dominating, and they have a running game that I think will be okay. But that passing attack, man, it was bad last year, and I don't think they'll be great this year, but I think they'll be a little bit better.
Scott, before we let you go, you're an NFL draft Nick like me. What was the biggest thing that stood out from you from this last week's draft?
Wow, I would probably say, the Bears draft had to be something that everybody was talking about. To be able to get Caleb Williams you're talking about an organization that hasn't had a Pro Bowl starter at quarterback since 1941. They've only had in the Super Bowl era, they've only had 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks. They didn't start Pro Bowls. So to be able to get number 1 and get a quarterback like Caleb Williams, I think that is probably the most fascinating part of the NFL draft. And then to do something completely unbear-like and draft a wide receiver at number 9 with the kind of talent that Rome Odunze has, I think to me that says something about the direction of the Bears and the NFL. And the NFL is better when the Bears are good, just because they're a team, the third biggest market. People get to talk about them. So that would probably stand out. But I'd say the quarterback, 23 offensive players in the first round. That's something we've never seen before. That's what's going to really determine whether or not this draft was successful and interesting, or if it just is a complete bomb, or how those quarterbacks end up doing.
Scott Docterman of The Athletic. Scott, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
There you go. Read that column in The Athletic if you're a Big Ten fan. But there's so I wanted to get, because again, we could have had like 18 different writers on, but God in heaven.
Yeah, no, I don't care to deep dive on Iowa, to be honest with you right now. I mean, like, we can do that in August or something, but I don't want to do that right now, nor much of that league or much of any league. I don't want to deep dive on right now when there's so many unsettled questions, even though the portal's winding down and all that. But I do think, for me, there have been times when I hear Big Ten and I just roll my eyes. But I do think if you at least read that article, that's the kind of stuff that I love, is just like little juicy tidbits on a lot of different things. And I had to ask him the question about the new schools coming in because, dude, that adds like another couple pages to your article when you're having to account for Washington and USC and UCLA and Oregon, especially if you're breaking down draft picks and talking about, personnel and things like that. So on the one hand, it's more work. On the other hand, I think it's effing awesome if you're Scott Docterman and you're suddenly getting schools like Oregon and Washington in particular with their recent success to write about. That's fun. That's some new infusion of flavor, much like you'll get with Texas and Oklahoma over in the SEC, and like we got with the four new schools of the Big 12 last year, and the four new that'll be joining this year. But I think that'll be cool in some ways. He broke down a lot of like the scheduling quirks as well, but we don't have time to get into everything. There's a lot of just interesting information in there for someone like me to digest, who's not necessarily a huge Big Ten fan. So, yeah, I appreciated that article, and I'll definitely go back and read the parts that I didn't get around to because it's a nice breakdown of everything. But bear in mind that with these super conferences, everything's bigger, and so every article's longer and everything takes a little bit more time to explain because you just got more to talk about. So, yeah, it's wild to see that many teams under one league's banner, but that's the new normal these days. And if anything, there's clamoring for that to possibly increase even more, depending on if Florida State gets their way or not. But yeah, that was a lot of good stuff, and just seeing those teams playing each other is going to be just really interesting. I'm sure it won't take long to set in that Oregon-Ohio State's a Big Ten game, but it's still just going to be kind of strange, right, on the surface initially. But I think it'll all get normal real quickly, and it'll be a lot of fun when we kind of settle in. I do wonder, though, about just in general, whatever conference it is, of just the like what he pointed out with his schedule, like the intention that was made in like making sure that teams play each other on a regular basis, and you don't have a Georgia A&M situation, which is kind of the downside to some of this stuff, is having two teams in a conference that never play each other basically in over a decade. It's just kind of silly. Or have the home and home in it takes over a decade to get that done. That's ridiculous. And I don't love that part of it, but you have to have concessions somewhere when you go and gobble up territory. So that's part of the deal.
Well, when they're at 24 teams in 2 years, then what are you going to do? It's just how
it's like the whole we got to avoid first round rematches. How? Like 50 of the teams are from two conferences, and you have like 9 of the 12 playoff spots. Like, how is that going to be possible? But
yeah, people aren't going to like that. Guess what? They don't like the way you're doing it now.
Well, have you noticed they're already talking about, what article was I reading? I forget what it was, but they were trying to differentiate. See, this is seeding, this is ranking, and here's the difference. And it's like already lubing us up basically to have to take it when Ohio State gets bumped up a spot so that they don't rematch freaking Penn State in the first round. You know what I mean? And it's like, not that they deserved it, but we got to avoid this rematch. So seeding versus ranking, it's like the playoff committee. Well, we don't go on the best 4 teams by winning, we go by the eye test. Like, they're already setting that up of like, well, this is not a ranking, this is a seeding, and there's a difference. They're already doing that, but that shouldn't come as a surprise.
There's a difference between crap and manure.
Right, exactly, is what it is, That's what it is.
Yeah, that's just so you know. All right, Garrett, we'll just keep it right here because I've got to go to. Well, it's just for a second, and then I'll do this quick portal rundown, and then we'll take the break, and then I'll get Max on the phone. Just some quick portal news to kind of wrap up the week in college football and basketball. Today, Florida landed a commitment from USC offensive line transfer Jason Zandamela. That's a huge deal for them because they lost a couple offensive linemen in the portal, but he's on his way there. Craig, hop in with these anytime you want, if you have anything to say. Some of these are just kind of matter of fact. An interesting entry into the portal the last couple of days is James Madison cornerback D'Angelo Pons. Had a great freshman year. He has 22 offers since entering the portal on Wednesday, and I'm going to read these as fast as I can, because there's 22 of them. Auburn, Miami, Tennessee, USC, Arkansas, Duke, Vanderbilt, Indiana, Illinois, Wake Forest, SMU, Indiana, Boston College, Houston, Memphis, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, FAU, Cincinnati, Pitt, UConn, Tulsa, Tulane.
Yeah, that's a lot of really good schools, and I don't know his exact situation in and out, but this is the benefit of the transfer portal. I know it's a huge loss for James Madison. They're a terrific program, though. They'll be fine. They're dealing with changes, and they always have and always will handle those well. But, yeah, it's a bummer to lose a great player, but that's the reality of today's game. And so I look at it from his perspective, and how incredible. I mean, whatever led you to James Madison to now have the opportunity to basically go play in the biggest leagues or in the biggest possible matchups and whatever. There's a downside to it, of course, of like one program gets hurt by it, but for the player, and so much is geared towards them, that's amazing. I can't even imagine what that must be like. And obviously he had an inclination that if he went to the portal, he's probably going to stand to make some money. But that's got to be a lot of fun to be dealing with that amount of attention right now. And so, yeah, that somebody's obviously going to get a big-time player. You have that list of schools that are all coming after a guy like that.
All right, let's see. A couple quick ones.
I saw General Booty transferring from Oklahoma.
Yes,
so
I was about to.
Can't have any fun T-shirts, I guess,
No.
or all the fun T-shirts that they had stormed up. But, yeah, he played at TJC. I'm from that area, and so I knew about him and how great of a JUCO player he was. And it was cool when he ended up at Oklahoma because it's another connection there for me. But, yeah, I don't blame him. He was not long for seeing the field. So, yeah, good for him wherever he ends up.
Absolutely. Okay. Moving on. Timmy McClain, former UCF and USF quarterback, has decided to leave that rivalry altogether. He's going to Arkansas State. He started against Baylor this year in the game. Baylor came back and won. He made a crazy good run on a play. Yeah.
One of the, if not the play of the year in college football. I mean, I don't know.
Just for a team that lost.
I mean, yeah, for that team particularly, I don't know where it ranked in, if somebody did a poll at the end or a top 5 or whatever, but I'd have to imagine it was right there in the mix because that was one of the craziest plays, if not the craziest play that I saw last year. And he ended up where you said, just to reiterate?
Arkansas State.
Arkansas State. So, yeah, that sounds about right. I was trying to think of what's another Florida school he could have gone to continue. I mean, Miami, Florida State, but beyond that, like where could he have ended up?
FAU,
FIU,
yeah,
Florida A&M. I mean, he could have ended up at a lot of spots, I guess. But that was okay. The only time I've been to Tallahassee, I didn't realize Florida A&M was in Tallahassee. This is like 15 years ago. So you get in the airport, and I'm seeing all this FSU merchandise, which is why I was there. And I saw all the Florida A&M gear, and I was kind of confused for a second. But then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, of course. They're in Tallahassee. Yes.
Yes, you're an engineering school.
But yeah, good for Timmy McClain. Good for him.
That's why I know. Like, that's why I became good friends with Roy Wood Jr. because he was at FAM. I was at FAM. Anyway, San Jose State transfer Javion Cole is going to visit Auburn and Texas. This is interesting because Texas needs some help in the secondary. The only portal loss that they're really kind of lamenting at Texas is Terrence Brooks, who I believe is visited Tech. At least that was one of the first stops along his path. But they lost Terrence Brooks, so he's out the door, and they need another defensive back. Javion Cole, San Jose State. I'd be crazy if I told you I knew anything about him. It just he played well enough at San Jose State to garner interest from SEC schools, so he's one of those guys. And the last one in football, Cormani McClain is eyeing a decision in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So, he could take one visit a day for 3 weeks and, still not get to everybody who wanted to talk to him.
Sure.
But yeah, so that'll come in the next couple of weeks. And I said to Garrett the other day, this is going to be one where like you wake up and be like, man, it's been 2 weeks already. Or just randomly on like Monday next week, he's going to be like, I'm going to Duke, or whatever it is. He's not like, that's not one of the things, but it's just, that's how these things go.
So UCF's got a chance here, right?
Yeah,
that's
he's
one of the schools that I've seen mentioned quite a bit for him.
Yeah, because he's right there from Lakeland. It's really close, and
you know what? If they were to land him, I don't know what the percentage chances are right now. I know USF are in the mix as well, and that would obviously be massive for them. So either one of those schools, but UCF with. Penny Boone and KJ Jefferson, and if you're to go land Cormont, like that's pretty damn good, transfer class. It already is. I think Gus's offense next year is going to be pretty fun. I need to read up more on the O line, but he's always going to have receivers. But you had Boone and Jefferson and. Shoot, man, as long as you can block for those guys, you should be able to score some points. Cormani McClain into the mix just in general on defense. I think that would be a huge feather in your cap as well. So, that's something that definitely Big 12-wise. Yeah.
All right, real quick on basketball here. Florida State forward Jameer Watkins has entered the transfer portal. He was only there a year. He played really well. This is a big one. Samford forward Akor. Who, if you watch that Kentucky game, 23 points, averaged about 17 per game, offense, defense, everything in between. He's going to be very sought after. He is in the transfer portal on the last day. Texas transfer forward Dylan Mitchell has lining up an official visit with the Miami Hurricanes. He was a little bit disappointing for Texas, but very highly recruited. Oklahoma State transfer Javon Small, a really good player for the Pokes last year, has committed to West Virginia, and they continue to get better. And then to wrap it up, Craig, check out this graphic here of what Mark Pope has done in the last 10 days. Amari Williams, Brandon Garrison, Kobe Brea, the statistically best shooter that was available in the portal and in college basketball last year. Andrew Carr, Lamont Butler, Otega Owen, and Kerr Krissa. That is the Kentucky roster as it stands right now.
Yeah, I know with Chris in particular, as some West Virginia fans who are, definitely like getting into the conversation about him in Kentucky and how big of an ad that really was for them and whatnot. And he's obviously a bit of a polarizing guy, I think it would be fair to say a little bit. But, obviously a lot of talent on that list right there, man. I see, Owen there for Oklahoma. You talk about a program right now that's really in desperate need of a little boost in every way imaginable. They are not happy with the Porter Moser situation right now, just losing guys left and right, not really gaining much at all, if anything, in the transfer portal, and just kind of there as they get ready to move into the SEC. But for Kentucky, they're reloading. This is what you expected them to do, is all that roster attrition, and obviously a new coach coming in created a lot of that. But I think that Mark Pope's done pretty dadgum well for himself, all things considered, and certainly he's dealing with almost an unlimited bank of excitement right now in Lexington, as far as just the want to be great again and the willingness to do just about anything. And that's Kentucky basketball in general, right? But they're really this turnover in coach has got them feeling like they've hit a reset button in so many ways. And so they are jacked to the gills to get Kentucky basketball back to where it belongs. And so, they've been very active, and it's been very impressive to see what he's been able to put together here in just a very short amount of time.
All right, when we come back, Max Olson maybe started some controversy this week, although I believe inadvertently. But
yeah, he just wrote an article.
Fantastic one, too.
All hell broke loose.
I've read it 3 times. 3 times trying to find something that was I get why Deion's always in the defensive, but 3 times.
I think that's 3 more times than a lot of Colorado fans and possibly coaches read the article, actually.
Yeah. When we come back, Max is with us here on 365 Sports.
TexasBeefHouse.com marketing director had an incredible online auction, live auction, of course, in the month of April. There'll be another one just around the corner. But May, people start to get out on the grills. The weather's cleared up. You got a special throughout and some ideas for the month of May.
So May, we consider May, June, and July as grilling month. We've got our jalapeno and cheese patties, our regular Wagyu hamburger patties, our garlic links. 2 things that people aren't usually familiar with are our flap steak and flank steak. Those are a large piece of meat that you can cut up and eat with a fajita, or a lot of people will just cut it up and eat like a normal steak. This is our favorite time of the year because it's the perfect weather to get outside and get that grill going.
In the end, did you guys have another great auction? Did it all go well?
We had another fun auction. We had Wagyu brisket at this auction. It was phenomenal. We had so many customers that were so excited. They've given us their feedback on Facebook. We've got a lot of exciting things coming with a new platform that we've got going called Bid on Beef that we'll be releasing in the next couple of months. We're really excited about what the future holds for us.
TexasBeefHouse.com. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, premium grade East Texas beef from their pasture to your plate. They'll deliver it to you locally. They bring it directly to your door. Farm-raised Wagyu beef. May grilling month, May, June, and July, and there's not a better place to find what you want to put on the grill, whether it's hamburgers, flank, or flap steak. Samantha, there's always that code to get a discount.
Yes, absolutely. Use the code SICK'EM10, SICK'EM10, and get 10% off your order of $100 or more.
TexasBeefHouse.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sick'em 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sick'em365.com.
Welcome back. Max Olson of The Athletic. Well known before he came on our show as a controversial firebrand newspaperman. But he did write a column this week on Deion Sanders and the portal and all of that and talk to the players. Max, I told you in text yesterday, I read the thing 3 times. It was so good and so in-depth and must have taken you a very long time to do and work through quotes and all of that. Are you surprised at the backlash that it got from Boulder, Colorado?
Yeah, Paul, appreciate you having me on as always. Yeah, it's definitely surprising. I mean, it's that all really escalated quickly. I've definitely been staying away from Twitter the past couple of days, and The Athletic is a subscription website. Obviously, there's you gotta pay to read the piece. There's a barrier to entry there. So I've been doing this long enough that I understand nowadays, sometimes the people who are the most mad about these things are people who haven't read the article, and I hope that people do. I hope that people read it and, understand what the story is actually about, because I think all of the, subsequent fighting that's gone on Twitter is not really what the story is about. I tried to really handle that with, a lot of care and fairness and trying to write about these guys who, this is not some sort of investigative hit piece on Colorado and its culture or anything like that. This is about, 53 guys who went through something pretty unprecedented in terms of the roster flip last offseason. And I've just kind of kept an eye on them over the last year. Was very curious to see, since I covered the transfer portal, where did they end up? Are they playing? Are they starting? Is it going well? And past couple of months have been connecting with them, and honestly, Paul, I was so impressed by their maturity and their perspective in terms of looking back on the past 12 months and kind of the roller coaster ride that each of them went on. And I really found that enough time has passed that the bitterness and the hurt kind of wears off, and these guys truly they don't hate Colorado, they don't hate Deion Sanders, they're still watching Colorado with fascination like everybody else, and I think that the story is really about them and just kind of trying to humanize them and the experience they went through. And it's certainly been surprising to see kind of what this has turned into.
Max, when you look at also like the kind of whole story at Colorado, like we're in the it's like they're trying to cure a disease or something. Like he's in the testing phase of, can I build a team 80 to 90% out of the portal year over year and win conference titles and get in the playoff? We don't really know that yet because he's only done it 1 year and they were 4-8 in his first year. So there's like a lot of results that have yet to be seen. He clearly believes in it, but it's still the amount. It's not that he's using the portal almost exclusively. It's the amount of churn that roster has that's going to make it hard for anybody to really build chemistry there.
Yeah, and that's why I've been so interested in Colorado over the past 12 months. It's because I've been covering the portal since it started, and this is absolutely like the most ambitious experiment in terms of roster building that we've seen with the transfer portal. To have 53 guys leave in one offseason, to cut 20 guys in after the spring game, like we haven't seen anybody do that before or since, right? And so you're just, I think everybody around the country is very curious, like, can you get the right players in there that pays off? Like, can Deion Sanders and his coaching staff figure out a way to really kind of hack this thing and have take a program from 1-11 to playing for a conference title in 2 years. I mean, it's just, if they pull it off, it'd be pretty incredible to see. So, and you know what, in covering the spring portal and stuff, like I think Colorado's gotten better. Like I think Colorado's definitely a bowl team, and I think Colorado, has a chance to be much, much improved in 2024. And so, but it's been another offseason, of 30 guys going out, 30 new guys coming in from the portal, and can they get, I think they're going to have better competitive depth this fall. Obviously the Big 12 is going to present some different challenges for them. But they'll also present some different challenges for the Big 12.
Max, there's been some cherry picking of particular quotes, to kind of drum up one side's argument of the piece and all of that. And like you said, people need to read it. And if they did, there'd be a lot less noise out there. But I know that's asking a lot in some cases. So when you talk to these guys, I mean, there's obviously some that felt like it could have been handled a bit better and that they felt kind of just tossed to the side or not very respected in some cases. But from just kind of gathering all the information together, I mean, is this just kind of business in college football these days, transaction-wise, or should we expect there to be more of a I guess on the part of Deion or his coaching staff, some emotional support for guys? I mean, this is a business after all, so what can kind of be expected when you're undergoing roster transition like this, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Deion Sanders was to his credit, he was very clear with his message from day one, and I think that's why all of them have very strong memories of that first team meeting, because he did make it very clear what he was coming in and planning to do. And, as Chase Dole, the wide receiver who went to ECU, said to me, like, he didn't think Deion was being a dick. He just thought that he was saying, prove to me that you can play. And so I think for those guys that went through that spring experience, obviously they figured out pretty quickly, like, okay, the Shedeur and Travis Hunter and these guys from the portal are kind of the stars of the show here. And it's an uphill thing to prove that we deserve to be here. And look, I think that it's clear. And this was what Deion Sanders told them when it was time to cut some of these guys loose is, I think he wanted to move on from guys he felt like could not help them in 2023. And he felt that he could get more, better, more experienced players out of the transfer portal to fill out that roster and really try to kind of remove a lot of the guys that, he felt like were responsible for a 1-11 season. So, talking to those players, some of them were not surprised that they ended up getting cut. They could kind of tell as they were going through spring ball, they weren't getting a lot of first team reps or anything like that. And I think that they understand, you got to remember, these are kids that are, 18 to 22, 23 years old. A couple of them I talked to were, coming out of their freshman year and had only been at Colorado for a season at that point in time. And I think they certainly understand, like, this is a business and it's a lot more transactional now. And, you got to prove that you deserve to be there, because there are a lot of replacements out there in the portal who can come in and contribute.
Max, in the portal right now, I mean, it hasn't been as huge or maybe earth-shattering as people thought, but there's a lot of interesting things going on. Dominic Williams from TCU is nearing a decision. What do you know about how the timetable for that?
Great question. Yeah, it's supposed to be today. I don't think we've got a clear time on when that's supposed to be. It does seem like this is certainly coming down to the wire in terms of a battle between Oklahoma, Texas, LSU, Missouri's in the mix as well. I think that you look at each of those situations, and he certainly would provide a ton of value to those teams. I mean, Oklahoma, I think people assume Oklahoma's the front runner. I guess we'll see. And Oklahoma, Brent Venables came out and said after the spring game, they've got a big need at defensive tackle because they only have one player on their team that has any starting experience at that position after Jacob Lissy had to medically retire. So I think that would be a really impactful piece for Oklahoma to pair him with Ethan Downs and who they have coming in and coming back on the defensive line. Certainly Texas is trying to replace Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, and LSU's trying to replace the 3 NFL draft picks at defensive tackle as well. So it's a tough decision for Dominic in terms of what's the place where you're going to shine the most.
I don't know what the percentages are on guys entering the portal and then deciding to stay where they are. I know it's not it's not the highest percentage, that's for sure, but it does happen from time to time.
I can tell you it's less than like 2%.
Okay,
it's a pretty small number. Yeah,
very rarely does it happen, but it does happen, and it happened in a big way for Arizona, Max, with Takario Davis, the big-time corner, deciding that he was going to withdraw from the portal and go play for Brent Brennan and Dwayne Aquina and Fafita and McMillan and all those guys. How huge was this for Arizona in your mind? Because it seemed like a pretty big deal to me.
Yeah, certainly after Damian Martinez, the Oregon State All Pac-12 running back, after he committed to Miami, then I bumped Takario Davis up to number 1 in terms of our best available rankings. And I think that a lot of just a really interesting situation of a player who went in the portal after their coaching change, but never moved, never left the program, and stayed. Wanted to give Brent Brennan and Dwayne Aquina and his coaching staff a chance. And clearly they made a good enough impression on him that he officially took his name out. And he certainly kept his options open, and I'm sure there are a lot of schools that would have liked to pick him up. And there were a few that definitely had needs at cornerback. But yeah, this was a big 6'4" long corner who was one of the best in the Pac-12 last year in terms of pass breakups as a starter, and I think has got a ton of potential there. So great heat for Arizona, and one that they really kind of had to manage that one day to day. And clearly, I think he must have liked what he saw in terms of this new regime.
Max, Penny Boone committed to UCF, ending a long journey through the transfer portal this offseason. But outside of him, what do you think of what they've done, kind of improving that roster for year 2 of the Big 12?
Yeah, I think it's been impressive, the high school recruiting and the portal recruiting too. I think UCF is one of those programs that everybody kind of talks about, Ole Miss and Florida State and USC and kind of all these, Colorado, all these schools that are competing for the crown here. But there's definitely there's another tier of programs that really can benefit from the transfer portal, from getting guys that maybe you're bringing in guys that were previously like highly rated recruits and they want more playing time, like we saw. Javon Baker really blew up when he went from Alabama to UCF. I think that's one of those programs that, because it's a desirable destination to live, and it's a good coaching staff and it's a Power 5 program now, and you got some stability with Gus Malzahn. Like, you can definitely see why it's an attractive spot for guys who are in the portal. And I think that the investment they've made in transitioning to the Big 12, I think is going to pay off for them. There's so many programs that you think are going to be better this season. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think KJ Jefferson was a pretty good pickup in terms of a veteran out of the portal. And, UCF is going to have some playmakers. We saw it when they upset Oklahoma State last year. They're going to, over time here, they are going to be more and more ready to kind of play with the big boys in the conference.
Yeah, they got not Jefferson now. They got Ja'Kurrie Brown as well. There's like 20 guys, but yeah, they got a really impressive list that's been building up. Max, I saw where you were at the Nebraska spring game. Are the Huskers back? Are they in the playoff next year based on what you saw in Lincoln last Saturday?
It's a little too early to say on the playoff. I will say there was a passing offense, and that was a big improvement from the struggles of year one under Matt Rule. I thought that certainly you had to like what you saw from Dylan Raiola. He can definitely sling it around, and I think that he's going to have to continue to earn it. But I think it'd be surprising if he's not the starter this fall. And there'll be some growing pains with that, but. Certainly they've improved their team as well. I think Isaiah Nayer coming over from Texas was a really nice addition. If he can stay healthy.
Yeah, love that pickup.
Yeah, I think that's a great move for him as a guy that just, got behind a bunch of studs at Texas. If he can stay healthy, I think that he's got a chance to really flash. They've had good pickups and they've had good retention there too. They just have not had a lot of guys leave that program for the portal. So, I think people are definitely expecting, significant improvement, especially offensively.
All right, Max, last thing before we let you go. Zachary Franklin, transferring from Ole Miss last year. Everybody wanted him, after UTSA. It did not work out, injuries and whatnot at Ole Miss. What do you know about the buzz around him?
Yeah, I think at this time last year, I think I had him ranked right there with Keon Coleman in terms of like the top guys in the spring portal. And, there was definitely a lot of schools fighting over Zachary Franklin and, got banged up there. And that's the thing that's tough. Sometimes when these guys transfer, it doesn't necessarily mean that they picked the bad school for them or something like that. It's if you have a little setback in fall camp or something like that, and you're playing with talented guys, they're going to surpass you. And it's going to be tough to get back out there. We saw that with, Jalen Robinson going to Ole Miss as well. So, I think Zachary Franklin, I was a little surprised because sometimes with those guys, you're like, I just assumed that they went through pro day and they, didn't get drafted or whatever. So a little surprised to see his name in the portal. And I don't know if UTSA is looking to bring him back. I don't know the status on that.
Based on what we know, that's a no.
So I think but I think he'll still have options. I mean, he broke all the school records in terms of receiving. Like he's a very productive player who I'm sure, feels like he's got a lot to prove right now.
Max Olson of The Athletic. Max, I cannot wait for your next controversial article.
Hey, no, in all seriousness, that was a great piece, man. And don't let the cult of personality bother you at all. I thought it was really well done and very fair as well. And so, man, keep up the good work.
You guys were not going to get me to say any viral bullshit today, I promise.
Oh, man, good stuff.
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, man.
Max Olson of The Athletic with us here.
That's a great way to send that off.
That was an ender right
for
there,
sure.
for sure.
And look, I think, he's unfortunately having to deal with the cult of personality right now. Mm-hmm. But read the article. I mean, like, I don't think you can read some of the tweets that have been aimed at him and then go read that article and think that that's somebody operating within their right mind or somebody who's actually read it. Just some of the crazier things that I've seen thrown out there. But, always enjoyed talking to him, enjoyed reading that piece. And like I said yesterday, man, I'm fascinated to see what Deion does in year two and if this whole situation works. Just talking about UCF, I mean, they haven't had the extreme amount of attrition that Colorado has had, because with Colorado, you're talking about like in the 40s and 50s. But UCF's had 20-plus guys going in and coming out. I mean, it's not like nobody else is having heavy-duty turnover. It's just that it's so high profile and it's so in the public eye, and in part because they're social media savvy over there. They're putting that stuff out constantly. We're seeing the behind the scenes. They're throwing all the locker room talk and stuff out there. So, everybody was aware. Everybody, not just in the Colorado locker room, that they were going to be, chopping heads when it came to the roster, and some players were not going to have a spot just based on playing time or whatever the case may be, fit and all that. So, it's a fascinating experiment going on right now, and whether it's a failed experiment or successful, we'll have a much better idea after a second season of seeing what it all looks like. But if it looks more like year one, then there's going to be a number of people ready to declare victory and that Deion is a phony and all of that. And if it works, well, there's going to be a whole lot of crow being eaten around the country, and there's going to be a whole lot of talking coming out of Colorado, more so than ever before. So I'm a partial observer in this case, and I am, as somebody who's going to be watching a lot of the Big 12, obviously, just very interested in how Colorado fits in and what kind of a shakeup they can create, because they could be a very big deal for the conference, or it could just be a little blip on the radar. It all depends on how successful they are on the field ultimately. All this stuff, that's all what it ultimately revolves around. So, yeah, big season coming up for the Buffs, especially I think after this latest chapter and just kind of the backlash that's been out there.
Yeah, again, we don't know. I'm curious to see about it because, again, he's trying to invent something here. He really is. And if it works, great. There's no one way to do a thing. No. It's just his way seems so radical and brash
and whatever, yeah.
Well, look, there was a time where Deion Sanders would not, no one would have hired him as a college football coach, no matter how,
oh, yeah.
It just would have
Not
happened.
that many years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's the rules are in place now where Deion can do what Deion needs and wants to do to be effective. So it's not there was a time Des Bryant suspended for the rest of his college career by having a meeting with Des and his agent. Now that's not even a thing, right? I mean, it's not. And maybe probably should have never been, but that was the kind of thing in Deion's background where you're he can't, if he aspires to be a college coach, that's the kind of things you can't do, So, I think it'll be interesting, to see where they go, but I don't think that people should buy into a lot of Deion's hype. And look, Deion is hyping it up to create hype. I think he understands reality of the thing, because there's the hype and the sales pitch, and then there's the reality of it. But he can't just turn around and
But they've also insulated themselves to the point where, you've created all this hype, and you know that the reward on the other end of it, if you win, is a massive amount of reward in creating all that hype and then sailing with it and taking it further and further. And then you also know that you can create all this hype, and if it blows up in your face, then, you just pull your typical act of, demeaning people, and, they don't know, and they're poor, and they're this and they're that, kind of like the family pulls that reaction every time they get some sort of backlash, it seems like. And I don't follow it on a close enough basis to know every in and out every day of that program, but I just know anytime there's some sort of a whiplash back in their direction, like with this piece or just the transfer portal in general, typically the response is that, the guys who left are bums and we're better than you and all that kind of thing, and that rubs people the wrong way. But that would be their response if it doesn't work out, I'm sure. But whether it does or not is an intriguing storyline entering this year, and there's clearly a line that's been drawn in some cases with certain parts of the college football fandom, people that feel he's absolutely full of it, and then people that think he can't do any wrong whatsoever, and that he's just a targeted man all the time. I think it's somewhere in between, but ultimately it's about wins, like anything else. It's about winning. So for the Big 12, you hope that they win, because that would be a big deal to have a hot Colorado team drawing in big TV ratings. That's the ideal scenario for the Big 12. But that's easier said than done, obviously, as we saw last year.
Absolutely. When we come back, Josh Neighbors, Big 12 Watch, will join us, and we can talk about some things until he hops on, but he can hop on any times he wants because he's on Zoom, and Garrett will have that on lock over there. This is 365 Sports.
It's the season to rev up your drive with Alan Samuels with the new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Waco. Your ultimate destination for unbeatable deals and top-notch service. Looking for a reliable ride to conquer these beautiful spring days? Look no further. The powerful trucks and sleek sedans are the perfect SUV. We've got the perfect vehicle to match your style and budget. Over 300 new vehicles to choose from. Now's the time to make your move. Enjoy special discounts, low financing rates, and incredible incentives. But hurry, these offers won't last forever. Alan Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texans are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
When your business depends on technology to stay on track, you need professional IT services you can trust. Carry On Solutions offers managed IT services, network professional consulting services, and cybersecurity. Carry On Solutions expert team handles M365 and Azure migrations, Active Directory assessments, security assessments and hardening, Exchange migrations, Windows Server upgrades, Veeam backup and recovery solutions, and more. In a world where technology is constantly evolving and security is an ever-ending concern, Carry On Solutions will keep your business running by minimizing risk, downtime, and giving you peace of mind. For more information, email sales@carryonsolutions.com or contact carryonsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. As you see, Smokey's not here. It's his birthday. He is 700 years old today. No, I'm sure sometimes you feel like it, but he is 65 and, pretty excited. I thought he was, excited. I mean, mostly about the free healthcare that he had. That was his big, exciting moment yesterday. But he'll be back tomorrow. And so he's off enjoying his birthday. I think he wanted to play golf this morning, but the weather was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, we had huge rainstorms last night, so I don't know if he was able to go do that or not, but that was what was in his plans, yes. So happy birthday, and here we are in his stead, and he'll be back tomorrow, like you said.
By the way, the Brazos, I think it's funny how rivers and lakes work, and I'll explain that here. You can be too low to put a boat in a lake. You can also be too high to put a boat in a lake. So when you want to go in the lake or river, it has to be just right. But right now, I believe the ramps are all closed because driving over here, crossing the river, man, it is way right up to the banks right now.
Well, I mean, we had like 2 years, and I know most people don't care, but like 2 years of drought. So I guess we're on the other end of that now because everything is cyclical. But we got a huge rainstorm last night, and it poured and poured and poured, and I think we needed it. I'm not sure kind of where we were on the lake levels before, but certainly we got a nice little refill, I think. So I'm sure all the park rangers and everybody else is, the water authorities are dealing with some situations, but probably happier about that than the alternative of this basically being a new desert, which is what it felt like much of last year. Good to have some rain here.
Craig, I was just scrolling through the chat to find different comments, and there's always a realignment thing. And I just want to point out to Jackson Johnson, he has he said he sees Notre Dame going to the Big Ten, and I'm going to reiterate this for everybody, and Craig will second it. Notre Dame's not going anywhere ever. Until they're absolutely made to by the rules.
Okay, yeah, I would say, like, don't say ever because you never say never. But I think Jackson, is that who you said it was? Jackson, I think that's not a domino that's popping anytime soon. At least I don't foresee how that would happen. They just signed a brand new TV deal. They've got really good money coming in. They're not beholden to anybody. They've got a nice arrangement with the ACC. Now, if you want to do what people do and start looking like years down the line or even, somewhat sooner than that and say, all right, if the ACC crumbles, then all these teams go these separate ways. Well, yeah, if a conference crumbles, teams are going to leave. So if the ACC dies, then yes, the Big 12 would be interested in adding, any number of teams. And so will the Big 10, and so will the SEC. Now, that would be interesting in how that would work for Notre Dame. But the one thing that I feel like just maybe it doesn't get the clicks and views, so it's not as talked about, or maybe I'm like my algorithm has it to where I only see Big 12 slanted stuff, but it's entirely possible the ACC still stays together, even if Florida State and Clemson leave.
Yeah.
That's entirely possible. I don't know how much that's being treated that way. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that would depend on, like what kind of a TV deal do they have, or what kind of arrangement is there in this area or that area. I wanted to say that because I think that just sort of gets tossed to the side, and I do think there is a chance that could still occur. Because if you're Duke or if you're some of these other schools, if you had the option to kind of stay where you are and sew that up as best you can and not go join the Big 12, wouldn't you rather do that? Unless you were forced into doing that, and I think that's where Notre Dame is basically what I'm trying to say, is they don't want to change, they don't have to. Now, if they're forced to in some way, then ultimately they maybe have to reach a fork in the road and make that choice. But I think with their TV deal the way that it is right now, and the fact that the ACC is still alive and figures to be until they aren't, then I think any talk about Notre Dame is a bit premature. But I understand because they're a very hot topic, and they are without a doubt the biggest brand that is out there for the taking, without a doubt. And so they're always going to be a hot topic when it comes to realignment, but I don't think they're on the forefront of anything that happens next. I think that is a couple more dominoes falling, and then you maybe get to that point, and even then I think it's going to take some extreme measures to force them into a situation where they're like, all right, we give in. We'll join up SEC, Big 10, whatever. That's where I come from.
Yeah, they have their own television deal. They don't have to share with anybody. That's the thing. Their own. And it's going to be close to as much as what the SEC's is. Close enough, especially when you don't have to share, And so it's going to be it's staggering there. Josh Neighbors, Big 12 Watch, joins us now on 365 Sports.
Sure, he has thoughts on this.
Over on Crystal Ball College Football. Josh, it's just, and the only reason I addressed that comment in the chat is I feel like I have to snuff that out anytime I can, because it's one of my biggest pet peeves of Notre Dame is definitely going to join the league. Why would they when you don't have to, and their AD has the same exact amount of power in charge of one school as Mike Slive or Jim Phillips, Greg Sankey.
Nice.
Yeah. Brett Yormark does over multiple teams.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. Whenever you read the articles, it's always everybody and then Jack Swarbrick. It's he is the AD. He's for one school. It is one school. It's funny too to watch Notre Dame. And I enjoy watching the Golden Domes, the helmets. It's cool when Notre Dame's involved in a big game. This year's Ohio State game never gets old. But it is strange, and it's why would you give that up? And also, maybe you can, but can you put a price on the fact that you've got this level of can you put a price on that, of influence? The fact that you are at the same table as 12, other schools, and now it's 16 other schools, as much of a commissioner of, however many schools. Yeah, it's only one. And yes, a dollar for dollar basis, I guess big picture, not as much, but they're still getting as much control and also attention as you could want, despite the fact that, hey, yeah, they're good. And I think Marcus Freeman's actually a pretty decent coach. I think he'll learn to be a better in-game coach. But the fact your program gets this much influence over what's happening, and you're just one program, why in the world would you give that up?
Yeah, and I appreciate, again, what was his name? Jackson?
Jackson.
I appreciate Jackson for throwing that in there. I mean, we're willing to talk about just about anything. But I think that we've kind of all come to the same sort of place when it comes to Notre Dame and they get brought up. My thing with them, as much as anything else, Josh, is you're special being by yourself. Like, I don't care how cool or golden your helmets are or how great your tradition is. If you go join a conference, you're just like everybody else. Now, you may be on a tier above Northwestern if you join the Big Ten and right there next to Ohio State, but you're not going to be above anybody the way that you kind of are above people, at least as far as your influence and your power that you have now. That's always been my biggest hang up, is that independence and that being as big on your own and not just folded into another league where you kind of just become another team. I think that's priceless in comparison to being able to throw a badge on your chest that says one of the two big conferences.
Well, it's funny too, because like the SEC just means more, right? So like that's their slogan. They think they're better than everybody else in like a competition sense. The Big Ten has this combo. I guess it's the Big Ten makes more money because like their brands are just kind of bigger, and they do have an
Big
arrogance.
cities, history.
Yeah. And there is an arrogance about the Big Ten. It's like the combo of academics and athletics that, just can't be beat. And so like I almost feel like it's too much butting of heads. I just I guess the big question is there a dollar figure that Big Ten schools could make, or whatever a Super League could make, where it's like, okay, now we have to throw our lot in, or you have to join a conference to be a part of this, whatever. Does that happen? I mean, I don't know. Not in the room for these things. We speculate about them, but like, is there a certain price for the freedom? Right? What is the price of freedom for Notre Dame? And right now, I actually don't feel like we're anywhere close, because they seem pretty happy with where they're at. I mean, just very, very pleased with where they're at financially. And I think financially, but I think number one is their influence, because their influence, to be honest, while financially they might not be as great and still pretty good, their influence has never been greater. I mean, you can't argue that, because their influence right now, they have just as much say as an entire conference, of teams has on some level. So like, what is the price for that for Notre Dame? Maybe there is a number, but I think for them,
I will say in regards to them,
stay on your own.
Yeah, I will say in regards to them that one thing that could force their hand would be that lawsuit that they just had from the National Labor Board directed at them specifically. Now, if there is to be a certain determination there that things have to change as far as like everything else, amateurism and things like that, that could be a situation that I think Notre Dame could be kind of squeezed a little bit. But beyond that, I think that all the reasons we listed are why they would stay status quo. Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, what did you think about Brett Yormark yesterday? I mean, look, he told us a lot of these things when we had him on at Big 12 Pro Day, but just kind of, in general, what he had to say about the Big Ten and the SEC partnership and, the money and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC and Big Ten, they are the hammer, right? So your job is to advocate for the conference. So I appreciate his idea of looking at, and honestly, I think for the most part, it's pretty dumb for anybody to sign anything long-term. Like, we've all kind of lambasted the ACC for their long TV contract, right? So anything long-term is not the way to go, just because everything is changing so fast. And the amount of money that, donors are investing in certain schools for NIL and whatnot, the status of NIL as it relates to employment for athletes is up in the air, right? I mean, are they going to become, employees? What does that look like? How much are they getting? Well, all of those questions are kind of looming over this entire conversation right now. So it's smart for Brett Yormark to advocate and say for the look in, but once, I think he understands that, at the poker table, he is not holding the best hand, although I think he does feel like, with the kind of success that he's had, that he might be the best poker player, but he might not have the best hand, is kind of the way that I would put this. So always advocating, but I think there is a realization, and I think maybe downplaying how good the Big Ten and how strong that partnership is. It may actually play into what I just mentioned, like the whole there is some contrast between, hey, the SEC just means more, the Big Ten, we're making more money than you. So, how much more does it mean on that front? So they're all playing poker to some extent, right? I mean, the worst poker player that we all know is George Kliavkoff. And there's a reason why, the final table does not include George Kliavkoff at this point in time. So I think he is pretty confident in his negotiating skills, but I think he's pretty aware of the hand that he has. So good to advocate for a look in, things of that nature. The Big 12 is surviving. It's got enough teams, if a voting block, if you will, to still be meaningful, enough brands, right? I mean, we're still, people forget pretty quickly nowadays, but once again, TCU was in the national championship game and did beat this year's national champion Michigan in a playoff game less than 2 years ago. So the Big 12 still has some cards to play on that front, but when it comes to the brands, they're not quite as strong. So I think always angling to make sure that your position is the number 3. And look, we're not talking about the ACC or the Big 12's collapse. You all just mentioned, hey, there's a chance the ACC still stays together, right? But the ACC is the conference now on the ropes in some ways. So the Big 12 it still feels like, from a stability standpoint, they are number 3. But let's talk about total value. I guess you could say, hey, they could be number 4. And I think they're making like a little bit less per team, wherever it is, from the new CFP contract. So he's playing chess, playing poker, whatever analogy you want to use. So I think he's barking up the right tree. And then obviously, he, whatever his thoughts are about basketball and the NCAA tournament expansion, it's good to advocate for that, because more Big 12 teams will get in, right, just because the net ratings, just like they basically will dictate, in some way, shape or form. The Big 12 net ratings are going to stay really strong. And so you should want more teams in when it comes to the NCAA tournament. But as far as CFP goes, I think he knows what he's got. He knows what he has here. And I think this is the right tack to take. Hey, I'm skeptical about, a long-term future, and there should be a look in, and downplay a little bit the Big Ten and SEC, but the Big Ten and SEC, they're not super, super concerned, in my opinion, about those comments that he made. It's not like they're earth shattering for them or whatever. They understand that, why he said what he did. So I think it's the right tack to take. Slight aggression, but not aggressive enough to rustle too many feathers.
Yeah, I mean, politically, it's the right move. You don't need to ruffle feathers. You're in a really sweet spot right now, and I feel like there's this sentiment, and maybe it's the minority, but like he needs to call every bluff, and it's like, no, he doesn't. He needs to play the hand that he's dealt and play it smartly. And right now, they're in a really good spot. So why sit there and try to bark up a tree that you're not going to be able to climb? I mean, I think people need to be realistic about where they are and where they're going to be at best, and they can be greater than they are, but you're not going to sit there and just challenge the SEC and Big Ten over every little thing because you want to be tough. That's the dumb move. Sometimes you just got to wait patiently, kind of like we saw, them do all of last year when it came to the realignment phase.
And they got the assist from the Big Ten, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Big Ten ultimately was the ones who swung it, right? That meeting happened. It sounds like the Pac-12 staying together, and the Big Ten came in and said, all right, Oregon, Washington, come on over for less, right now, and then long term we'll take care of you. But like, that's kind of, you have to go with the tide, but you can posture a bit higher than the tide, I guess you could say. That's the right way to do it. And also, it's funny because what's taking the oxygen right now is, in terms of Big 12 storylines, is actually the Colorado stuff, in my opinion, right now. Like, that's been a bigger story than all this. So kind of let Dion take that air, and you can come up with your own jabs, and the folks like us who pay attention to this, I think are thinking about that. But this is kind of the downturn for college football, at least at this moment in time. So right tact to take, right position and everything. And I mean, look, he acknowledged he's not the biggest college football guy. So I think, with all of that in mind, like, he's not taking the massive stance. I'm not going to, take, as much oxygen away as everything else. And I think he's got the right messaging in mind, in my opinion.
Do you think that he trusts the Big Ten and SEC, even though he says things are great?
So no, he doesn't trust them, but I think at this point he has to trust the fact that the Big Ten and SEC, they cannot break away. They cannot do the 40-team league because the risk at this point is way too high. Like nobody is making a high risk move. What's the last big risk that a college administrator took? Like, I mean, and I want you all to, kind of actually answer this question, not rhetorical. Like, what's the big swing that somebody took as of late where we're like, that's a big gamble? It's
Big 12 Mexico.
Right. And guess what? That's on hold.
Yeah, it's on hold. Yeah.
That's on hold right now. So the big swings, kind of few and far between, excuse me, right now.
All good.
You gotta make
we all
it,
get
Josh.
choked up thinking about how that Kansas-Houston game in like Cancun would have been magical.
Guys, I did 7 hours of radio tonight, so I'm a little bit.
Been there.
Oh, wow.
My voice is not as strong right now as it normally is.
Oh yeah, we've both been there.
Well, before it winds down, yeah, we've both been there. Definitely have had some of those types of days. You mentioned it. Let's get your thoughts on Deion in Colorado. Enough Big 12 and Yormark. What are your? I mean, everybody's got opinions on this. We had Max Olson. I mean, he's at the root of the storm. Although he wrote a great article and shouldn't be getting really any flack at all for what he wrote about. But obviously, Deion and that program are. They're right there in the epicenter of college football discussion right now, and really since he's arrived. So I think it's going to be a huge boon, especially if they can win for the league because of the ratings and things that it'll bring. In either way, it's going to bring up a lot of attention. But what do you just make of this current, controversy, if you will?
He's not here for a good time or a long time. He's here for a good time.
Right,
it feels like, right? I mean, you look at the transfer numbers and look, I think about Michigan State and the one big season they had, right? With all the transfers. Mel Tucker would have kept his job most likely, whatever you want to say about that situation, if they were good enough, consistently. I think he keeps his job, but they were not good enough consistently for him to keep his job. And that's kind of what Deion's doing here. His recruiting classes aren't big. It does not feel like they're and especially the way they treated coaches, they're not developing talent. And also they're not fostering good relationships with players pretty clearly. So I think that for Deion, we're kind of testing the idea of like, how poorly can you treat kids? Because you're not Nick Saban. Nick Saban's got a reputation and, he can do things his way. Can Deion Sanders do things his way? And his way right now is not like some amazing model. It feels like he and his family are almost running this corporation that is Colorado football. And I was really, really off-put by those comments that Shedeur made, because we're talking about how weak the quarterback class is next year. And you got Shedeur out here being like, yeah, he must have been pretty mid because I don't remember who his kid is. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound like a number one pick. That doesn't sound like go ahead.
That to me was much more controversial than anything Deion did, except for then when Deion came to his defense, obviously.
Basically backs it, yeah.
Yeah, Deion had to reinforce what Shedeur said, but before that, I thought that Shedeur was the one that the controversy surrounded, to be honest with you. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's just well, no, but that's the point, and like he backs his son, so I'm kind of curious about all of this because look, you were 4-8 last year, which was better than what you were before. But you got so many glaring holes on this roster, this team. I'd be more concerned about what I've got currently than any Twitter beef and about how to improve what I have right now. And that this was the big problem when he made the "I'm bringing my Louis" comment. Like, that's kind of what that shines is that he didn't do evaluation of the roster they had. I know they were terrible, but those guys could have been meaningful depth for you. What if we watched tape on all the players we had and said, oh, this guy wasn't developed by the previous staff. So what if our staff spent time on these players, some of these players, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys, 8, whatever number you want to pick, and put time into making sure these guys could be helpful depth for Colorado, because they had some stars. They just had a bunch of massive glaring holes. And I'll tell you what, guys, the one thing the Big 12 has, it may not have a talent, but a lot of really good coaching and a lot of programs that are the flip side of Colorado: Iowa State, K-State, Oklahoma State. Those schools all develop talent really well and get the most out of their players. Deion does not seem too concerned with that, and I don't think that pays dividends in this league. This league has been a development league and getting the most out of your players type league. And so if I'm like, I don't think this is going to go particularly well in year number 2. I think 4-8 is probably where they end up once again. So I've got some serious questions about Dion, about what he needs to do, about his long-term future, about what he's angling for. Once his kids are done, does he want to stay at Colorado or go somewhere else? Because the Sean Lewis thing was a big red flag to me. Trusting Pat Shurmur to run the offense again is a big red flag to me. And the influx and I guess redux too of guys they had is a big red flag to me as well. Some of these Big 12 schools, they've actually done a pretty good job of retaining talent. This is another massive flow. Dylan Edwards at K-State, going to K-State's a good example of this. Like, it's just not a solid situation, and solid is what you want when you're building a program.
Yeah.
And he's not doing the solid stuff right now.
If you look like across sports, Josh, in all of like professional sports, there have been like 4 teams in the history of sports that have gone all in on free agency and won the title, right? Like the Marlins did it 2 times, but that's all they could muster. The Heat did it, right? And then like a couple NBA teams did it, but it's never really happened in the NFL. And it's not really like, if you look at, Michigan, like all the teams that have won in the transfer portal era, they have supplemented their roster through the portal. But when it comes down to it, it's mostly guys who have been there. And even if they came from the portal, they've been there for 2 or 3 years.
The portal, you mentioned it perfectly, like supplement, right? Complement, finish off a roster is what you want to do in the portal. Not like completely put the roster in the portal's hands. And basketball is important for continuity and all that kind of stuff. Football too, though, like a secondary, you want some continuity. You want guys to know each other's tendencies, things like that. And for them, I'm on board with you. It's just, this is not the way. Spurs are a good example. Drafting well. Kawhi Leonard obviously is like the prime example of drafting a guy that extended the Spurs window, right? Because you brought that guy in who was such a difference maker, but they had all these guys around them, the Boris Diaw's of the world, the Thiago Splitters of the world, the Patty Mills of the world. That's what free agency and college versions of the portal is for. It's not for the complete build. If you're talking about how to be consistent year in and year out, I know it's hard to be, but still it feels like the Iowa States, the K-States, the Oklahoma States, they're still building teams that direction. They're still developing talent with that direction. And like Alan Bowman is a good example of this Oklahoma State. The guy is not excellent at quarterback, but you know what? He was exactly what Oklahoma State needed. And that's the guy they got out of the portal, and that's the guy who took care of them at that spot. And that's what the portal is for. It is not for completely building. And in 1 year as an overhaul, yes, but they're not doing 1 year overhauls. Well, every year is a 1 year overhaul. It's not overhaul, develop. For them, it's overhaul now, back-to-back years. So we should be asking the questions. All right, Dion, you got all these guys, and some of them left. Now you got all these guys again. What are you doing in particular in the margins, I should say, to make it better?
Absolutely. Josh Neighbors, Big 12 Watch over on Crystal Ball College Football. Go over to that channel, like and subscribe it. Watch it when you're not watching this one. Josh does great stuff over there, and we're frequent collaborators over here.
Yeah, and I do want to circle back.
Go ahead.
Still on there?
No, go ahead. Yeah, he's here.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
no,
here.
okay. I thought I was going to go back to something else. My bad, Josh. No, I don't have anything else for Josh. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
No. Okay.
Bye, guys.
All
Love
right.
you all.
Thank you, buddy.
All right. Bye, Josh.
Yeah.
So.
No, I thought he was off. So I was going to circle back to the Notre Dame thing and just go back to Jackson's comments of there is something to keep an eye on with them in regards to the court system, and I kind of brought it up, but the National Labor Relations Act, there was the allegations that Notre Dame, and they've been charged violating Section 8 of that act by misclassifying athletes as student athletes when they are in fact employees, and so there is that battle. And obviously with Notre Dame being a private institution, Paul, there is like that particular element of all of this, the private school function of college sports and kind of how those schools operate versus the public schools and how that will operate perhaps in the future. And so that is something I think to at least keep an eye on. And if there were to be, some sort of a ruling there where all of a sudden Notre Dame's forced into a situation where they need to classify, players as employees or whatever the case may be, then those are the types of things that I think could add up and lead to, okay, you're thereby forced to make a move of some sort. But I'll maintain until that day comes and there is a gun put to their head and they're given the choice of, pick one or you don't exist, basically. Until that day comes, they're going to stay happy and independent as long as they possibly can, which I think most people agree with that. But I know there's always, rightfully so, clamoring for them to be shoved into a league just for, I guess, territorial, satisfaction of people, because it's almost like a game, like it's Risk or something. And just having a brand like that under the umbrella for the tribalistic, beat your chest. The Big Ten has Notre Dame now. I don't know how much of a difference that makes when you've already got Oregon, Washington, all these other programs, but I know it's a bragging rights thing and also a prestige thing and history thing and all of those. But yeah, that's the courts would be as likely to force Notre Dame into a situation, I would assume, as much more so than they themselves deciding that they would have to make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers, here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, as we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around this time. It's a grab bag of stories from all over the sports landscape, dictated by just what's out there, what's of interest, and what kind of is in our atmosphere when it comes to the things we typically talk about. And obviously college football is on the front burner at all times with this show. We do mix in some other things like we will with the Cowboys here in just a few minutes. But college football is the bread and butter, and this really isn't off the radar, but it is because we haven't talked about it today. and that is the fact that Kirby Smart is now the highest paid football coach in the college ranks and the first to reach the $13 million per year mark. A new 10-year, $130 million deal approved by Georgia officials today in their annual board of directors meeting. He is now the highest paid football coach in the entire sport and the first to that $13 million mark. He was going to make a little less than $11 million under the old deal. So now getting a bump of a little less than, or a little over, I guess, $2 million. They had a statement that he, obviously he's grateful and he's humbled and all those things, and talked about how the current culture in college is ever changing and more challenging than ever as he makes $13 million a year, but that he appreciates the Georgia leadership and, the typical things that you read in a press release. But did you know who was, I guess, the highest paid prior to this as far as college football coaches go?
No.
Well, Nick Saban. Yeah. Nick Saban was the guy. But then Dabo Swinney was there as well, who was making an average of $11.5 million. So he is he's now the $13 million man, one Kirby Smart. So I'm sure there's a bunch of bonuses and things that are attached to that as well. But not a surprise there. He's got the best program in the country, especially now that Saban is retired. So not breaking news like, oh, my God, I can't believe that happened, but breaking news in terms of it was made official today. So there you go. Kirby Smart, the first head coach to $13 million per year.
Well, congratulations to Kirby Smart. He's earned every penny of it. And look, he should be the highest paid coach because he's the guy with the most national championships right now since Papa Nick is hanging him up. And, manning the microphone now. And
what? Dabo's got a couple, right? So
yeah, Dabo's got 2. So they're tied,
yeah.
Right? So Dabo's got 2. He's got 2. There's the new coach at Michigan, Ryan Day's never won one. Mac Brown has 1.
Yeah, he's still coaching. That's right.
Mac Brown has 1.
I forgot. Yeah, he's still coaching.
That's about it.
Yeah, I think that's about it right now. Yeah, because, Kirby and Nick, I talked to them like they're my boys. We're going to be on the lake later this weekend, me, Kirby, and Nick. They gobbled up so many of them that there's not really any others that are still around or that have been able to grab more than one or so. Mac probably should have ended up with 2 or 3 when all was said and done if things had fallen a certain way, but just wasn't in the cards for him, at least not up until this point. So there you go. Some interesting news there, and we'll see who will break that. Who will break the $13 million mark now set by Kirby Smart? Dabo, you would think, would have to win a bit to get a new contract where he's the highest paid coach once again. So I don't know if there's anybody really, Sarkisian maybe, but geez Louise, that's $13 million per year.
Either him or if Ryan Day somehow pulled off and got a championship at Ohio State and he beat Michigan the same year, his ass is going to get that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that would probably be the best case scenario.
If Ohio State does not take a huge jump with the roster that they have right now, and whether it's Will Howard or Devin Brown or whoever, you should be able to move the ball with the guys that they have.
Yeah, for sure.
And they defense alone has most everybody coming back except for linebackers, but all but one defensive line starters back. The secondary's back and added Caleb freaking Downs. So again, excuse me, I'm verklempt here over thinking about Ohio State tripping over their own feet against Michigan again. I don't see them losing with that roster that much.
Yeah, we'll see. But with Saban out of the way, Dabo now jumped over. Dabo would be in that second spot. But for what it's worth, Ryan Day is now the third highest paid head coach per year, a little over $10 million. So he'd have to win massive to get another 3 per year. Man, you look back, the list that I grabbed earlier was from late last year. So it was about as accurate as it could be initially. As Mel Tucker was on there in the top 5. And I was just like, man, what a reminder of what an absolute bust that whole situation was. You got Kirby Smart, Dabo, Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, who makes around $10 million, and then Brian Kelly. That is your top 5 now. I know you think that Brian Kelly is worth $13 million per year.
Yeah. Put in the NIL. Come on, man.
So that was the last look, and that's where you are now. So there we go with that. Just interesting to see with all that money flowing. Meanwhile, the NBA on TNT, or the fact that there might not be NBA on TNT in the future years, has become a very hot topic just around the sports rights, sports media, sports broadcasts, and just, I guess, general sports world, as there is a massive audience for the TNT crew. Ernie and Kenny and Charles and Shaq, even though Shaq, I just... enunciate, pal. Like, just enunciate a little bit.
I love his podcast with Adam Lefkoe. It's very fascinating, but again...
Does he talk differently at least?
No, it's the same.
I can't stand it. I'm sorry. I appreciate his insight, but it's so deep all the time. And I can't... I just enunciate a little bit, but he's obviously great, and they have a great crew. But there's been a lot of talk about the NBA rights and the bids that have been made for the NBA rights, and there is a very real chance that the NBA could no longer be on TNT as negotiations continue on. And so that's led to this question of where could they go if the NBA decides to go a different direction. Where could that leave the TNT crew? And so that's led to a couple of them going out and talking about what would possibly happen. And Charles said in an interview with 850 ESPN in Cleveland that he just signed a 10-year deal 2 years ago, but that one of the things he did was put in an opt-out a couple of years into that contract because he wanted to, quote, cover my ass when it comes to this situation. And so he knew that the contract was coming up and that if the possibility was there, he wanted to get out. And he said, if you guys lose the NBA, I want to make sure I can get out of here. I love TNT. They've been great to me. I wanted to make sure that if we lost the NBA in 2 years, I could be a free agent. So that is Charles on the record saying that he's basically open, I guess, to whatever might happen. Meanwhile, there was another report by Tom Friend of Sports Business Journal that said Ernie Johnson would likely remain with the TNT, or I guess Warner Brothers Discovery family, even if they lost the NBA. And this is in light of the Comcast bid for like $2.5 billion a year. But he's been with Turner Sports Johnson since 1989 and has been their NBA studio host since 1990. So there are some questions as far as like, would they have any NBA coverage at all? And if they don't, would that him he have no choice but to leave since that's his bread and butter? But that's been an interesting thing to see, kind of the outpouring of support and almost like emotional responses to the fact that TNT could lose their big broadcast crew.
Yeah, I hope that they don't. My God, I mean, they're so good together. It is such a good show, and they are so candid. And Ernie Johnson, look, he's going to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Yeah. He's incredible. It is so good. I mean, and the way, if you've just watched this week in the playoffs, they may have never done a better week of shows than they have right now. They feel like, and part of it is just they're having so much fun doing it. It is infectious. And even if you're not like a huge NBA fan, you're kind of casually watching, you can kind of get the scope of what's going on in the playoffs just by watching them. Mm-hmm. And again, look, Kenny Smith fell the other day. I don't know if you saw that. That was hilarious. And they put up cones and made a whole kind of thing about it. And the chemistry that Chuck and Shaq have is really hard to get from big personalities like that. It's either going to work perfectly because they totally understand each other, or it's going to be terrible because they're both huge divas. But when you can just here, Shaq, you dumb. Why you got $1 billion? I don't know how you did, because you dumb, Shaq. And then Shaq just laughing.
Shaq tells him he's won no rings, and then it gets awkward because it hurts personally.
But yeah, Charles, the way he calls things out. But yeah, look, he'll wind up. And look, I do think, though, that while Ernie Johnson might all of that, I think, though, that if that show's in the water at all, there's going to be some buyouts and some things going on.
I think Amazon's got it's the inside the NBA on Amazon or something. Yeah,
and Amazon has the money to be listen, Ernie, I know that you did this stuff with TNT and Shaq and Kenny Smith, but or TNT, hey, listen, Turner, I know you lost it. None of these guys are under contract, but how much about for this much money, and we give you back something that you you want that we own. They're like,
Charles
oh, yeah,
letting it be known he's going to go for the money. Like, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind, especially if you're a fan of that crew, that they could be, in a little bit of upheaval depending on how the NBA decides to proceed forward with their broadcast rights. But that is that's the one that that is actually intertwined with what we've been talking about, because all through the Pac-12 situation and the Big 12's, even their quick negotiation, when you were talking about what's coming up and where's the money going and money's running out, how is it running out? Well, the NBA is coming up, and they're about to make a couple plus $1 billion, if not more than that. So that's kind of how it all ties in together there. Meanwhile, just some other kind of more simplistic notes here. Earlier today, Rangers won, but Nathan Eovaldi, Paul, I don't know if you saw this, groin injury, he had to leave. And so I know this isn't really for our broader audiences, but as a Rangers fan, I'm going to mention them when I get a chance to, since we don't talk a lot of baseball. And that is the last thing they need is for Nathan Eovaldi to be injured, but they did beat the Nationals 6-0. So that was good, and he had a pretty terrific performance over 5 1/3 inning, but he said he feels all right after the game, but that is something to monitor for those Rangers fans out there, and I know we do have a few. Meanwhile, Ezekiel Elliott, I know we're going to talk about him upcoming, but he will wear number 15, not number 21, with the Cowboys as he makes his return. He wore 21 during his 7 years with Dallas, wore 15 with the Patriots last season, and so he'll be wearing number 15 as Trey Lance moves over to number 19. So Trey Lance also in the news today as the Cowboys, and I suppose you will get to this as well with Mickey Spagnola, but they declined his 5th-year option, which is not a surprise, but I don't know. There's a couple of Cowboys notes for you to carry on over here.
Yeah.
But Zeke, smart too, because while you do think like, hey, let me go get my old number back, New Jersey sales, buddy.
Money.
Yeah. That's smart. The New Jersey sales, because otherwise everybody's just going to take the old 21 out of the closet and throw it back on since they haven't changed uniforms. But, he's making that switch, and Trey Lance making that switch, but Cowboys not picking up his option. What do you think of all the talk about him? Like, do you really think he has a future in Dallas long term? Like, do you really think that they think that he could, like, be something if Dak doesn't work out? Trey Lance.
No. I mean, look, I think it was – I don't understand it if you still had Cooper Rush.
Their entire room's free agents next year, by the way.
Yeah.
The entire room.
Yeah. Dak won't be. I mean, they're going to have to re-sign Dak. Or they're going to get down to the point and, like, they're going to be like, all right, Trey Lance is the guy.
Trey Lance is the guy.
And they're going to re-sign him.
That's what I'm asking,
Yeah, I don't think so. And they can't. I mean, like, again, they put themselves in this position by the way that they negotiate things. Honestly, like, look, everybody has a salary cap bill come due, and they could have had it, but, like, it's not like this came up like they woke up one morning and like, holy crap.
Yeah.
What the hell? I didn't realize this. You knew. And, look, they've done this. This is the second time they've done it with Dak. And, it's now they're doing it with CeeDee Lamb, and all these other people are getting these great contracts in, and they're like, I don't know, we're really going to get a good one with CD. Like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're going to wind up paying more because, look, the guys who have signed in the last couple of days are really good. Like, Amon-Ra St. Brown is fantastic. Love Amon-Ra St. Brown. A.J. Brown is an absolute stud. CeeDee Lamb had a better season than both those guys last year. So, in the current state of the world that we live in, CeeDee Lamb is the best player, statistically. You can say, A.J. Brown is bigger, or he has a faster 40 time, or whatever. Like, right now, CeeDee Lamb is not only the best of the receivers who have contracts coming up, he's the best player on your offense. And the second best player is your quarterback, and they're both in the same spot. Nobody else really has this problem. The Cowboys do.
Save this for Mickey. Yeah.
Because they want to push everything to the end.
Right.
And that's why. Like, oh, no, we got it. It's done. Well, you could have just done it before.
So no on Trey Lance being part of the future.
No, okay, that was a long-winded. No.
Right. I just want to make sure we get to the end of this.
I heard Will McClay talking about him on Sirius yesterday, and he was like, oh, yeah, he's great. Like, yeah, but you still have Cooper Rush. Like,
right.
Like, you don't really, like, he's just there. So.
Yeah. All right. So back to, I should have mentioned this with the Charles Barkley, but I did have it one tab too far over. But kudos to the city of Galveston, as you may have seen Charles throwing some shots their way the other day, talking about the dirty water. And
he was right.
Yeah.
Galveston.
I mean, talking about everything. Huh?
It was Galveston.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said Charleston.
No, I said Galveston.
Oh,
Charles
said Charleston. I was like, Charleston's beautiful. What are you talking about?
No, Charles talking about Galveston.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Galveston's Tourism Bureau had a funny response as they posted a couple of billboards. I don't know if you guys had seen this or not, but a couple of billboards as you are driving around that area, and it's just got a picture of like where the waves meet the sand initially, that little break right there, and that's the backdrop. And then in just white lettering, it says on one of them, "Hey, Charles, come on down, water's fine. Love, Galveston." And then I know some people disagree with that, but the other one was pretty funny. "Hey, Charles, our water is cleaner than your golf swing. Love, Galveston." So
that's pretty cool.
The Tourism Bureau having some fun with the fact that Charles took some shots at the lovely island of Galveston. But I know a lot of people here in Texas, we've all experienced it, and we're like, yeah, we know where he's coming from. We totally there's some charming things about Galveston, but yeah, he's not totally off base with what he was saying there. All right, wrapping this up here. I talked about Trey Lance. Cowboys declined his fifth-year option, which is not a surprise. Broncos also, unsurprisingly, declined the fifth-year option on Zach Wilson a few days ago. And I was just thinking about this in terms of Jeff Grimes, and I think he's going to be excellent at Kansas. But I do think that when he was at Baylor, a lot of kind of what was promoted early on was like, he coached Zach Wilson, and then you see what Zach Wilson's turned into. But I think at Kansas, he's going to be terrific with running that type of offense with Lance Leipold. But man, what a flame out. I know BYU fans bummed that Zach Wilson didn't become a bigger star. Thankfully, Puka Nacua has said, like, I'll be the star, I'll take it. Fred Warner's like, I'll be the other, I'm the guy, I've been the guy, I'll continue to be the guy, and Puka can join me in this. So they're not losing out on star power. But I did want to mention that, and I don't know what Zach Wilson's future in the NFL is. I mean,
no.
I don't know at this point if there is one. He luckily made a good amount of money pretty quickly, but there's just clearly there's not a lot there in terms of what people think that they could see.
I kind of hope the UFL helps guys out,
right? Yeah,
where you can maybe go and play a year or two. Like, look, it did with Flutie in the CFL, right? Where you can be this highly touted guy, but really you're not ready at the time, or in Flutie's case, like, it was a little bit of both. Like, he wasn't ready for the NFL. The NFL wasn't ready for a quarterback like Doug Flutie. And he had a nice little, run there with the Bills. It wasn't long, but he was a long-time professional quarterback. That's where, to me, the CFL and the UFL should help guys in that if you're Zach Wilson and you can go to one of those leagues and be good for a minute and then be confident and, like, not have – being the Jets quarterback and being terrible is a really hard thing to do because you can't escape – like, everywhere you go, like, you sit down in a restaurant and you're like, I'll have the steak, medium rare, and a baked potato. You're like, a steak and a baked potato for the guy who sucks.
Yeah, I'm thinking more or less you order DoorDash and you put a different name on it if you're Zach Wilson. Like, this is for Greg Jenkins or something. Like,
Greg Jenkins. You look a lot like Zach Wilson. Get that all the time. He sucks, right?
Right.
I'm going to go cry.
I mean, otherwise you're checking your food and making sure there's nothing in it. I mean,
it's tough. Like, Randy Johnson was a legendary pitcher, went to New York and was just not good in New York. And then people like yelling down the street, like, Johnson, you suck. And like, well, in no way is that true, but in the context of the Yankees, he wasn't very good. It's a different kind of thing. So I hope that Denver works out or whatever happens down the line, goes on for him. But because he seems like a good guy. And
he seems like a nice guy, but clearly the game's just not there. Broncos don't see it either. That's why they're not picking up that option. I mean, that was no matter where he was, that was going to be the case. I mean, they would have had to pay $22 million for what? For nothing proven or nothing that looks like it's going to be proven anytime soon. So there you go with that. But I just wanted to tie in that because of the BYU flavor there. Meanwhile, close it out. Got a couple games in the NBA tonight. Bucks at the Pacers. That'll start at 5:30 Central Time on TNT. And the Pacers at home can take that series up 3-2. Also in the East, and the doubleheader on TNT. As we'll see, the whole gang I was just talking about. And I wonder if they'll have any response to Galveston at the Tourism Bureau billboards. But the Knicks at the 76ers at 8 o'clock. New York can advance with a win on the road as they are up 3-2. So a spicy little doubleheader on TNT hoops-wise. And then one game in the NHL tonight as the Stanley Cup playoffs continue on. Boston on the road against Toronto. Toronto with a big win to extend the series. The last game and now at home fighting for their playoff lives as they are down 3-2. So the Bruins can advance if they win 7 o'clock on TBS, and there are a few things off the radar.
Thank you, Craig. When we come back, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. This is 365 Sports.
It's the season to rev up your drive with Alan Samuels with the new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Waco. Your ultimate destination for unbeatable deals and top-notch service. Looking for a reliable ride to conquer these beautiful spring days? Look no further. The powerful trucks and sleek sedans are the perfect SUV. We've got the perfect vehicle to match your style and budget. Over 300 new vehicles to choose from. Now's the time to make your move. Enjoy special discounts, low financing rates, and incredible incentives. But hurry, these offers won't last forever. Alan Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Mickey Spagnola and we ping-ponged last week, and it didn't work out before the draft. And, part of that I do blame Jerry Jones, because you had to be at a pre-draft thing with Jerry. Jerry, and I'm not saying this to dog him, he gets dogged enough, but he lives on Jerry time. So a lot of times if a press conference is supposed to start at 10, you give him a grace period, right, Mickey?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you when we used to tape this show that I had a new diet. It was the Jerry Jones show, because I'd miss meals waiting for him to show up for the interview. But that's what you sign up for, right?
Yeah. Look, and when when you're the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, you control the clock. That's right. When it's your time. So it's just how it goes. Mickey, before we get to the draft, obviously the big decision this week is bringing back Zeke Elliott. Now, I do have questions about his overall athletic tank that is left, and that's, I think, what concerns me the most. But they are going with the running back by committee approach, clearly. And that can work, and it has worked for a lot of teams. Why is it going to work in their minds in this particular case, bringing Zeke back?
Well, look at it this way. I think everybody thinks that Zeke is basically using a walker. Last year, he played 51% of the snaps for a very bad offensive team in New England, right? Mm-hmm. He nearly had 1,000 yards from scrimmage between rushing and receiving. So he did something right to be able to be that productive for a team without a quarterback. So to me, it's like let's see. And I think one of the things people don't remember, Paul, is the fact that until Terrence Steele got hurt his last year with the Cowboys, he was averaging 4.2, 4.3 yards a carry. After Steele got hurt, that average dropped to 3.8. He only averaged 3.5. So they were having trouble running the football, especially after Steele got hurt. And remember that year, they didn't have Tyron Smith until Steele got hurt. And when he came back, he ended up playing right tackle the last, I want to say, 4 games, plus the playoff game. He hadn't played right tackle since 2012. So to me, I understand why they let him go. And I had more to do with the fact that he had a $10.9 million base salary than it did about his production. Last year, they said, well, okay, we're going to pay Tony Pollard $10 million for a franchise tag. He averaged 4 yards a carry. Was it Tony Pollard, or was it the fact that they didn't do a very good job of run blocking? So I'm not writing Zeke off as it's time to go to the old folks' home. And by the way, he basically finished signing his contract on Tuesday. And Wednesday, he was a substitute participant in their home run derby for charity. And I know they use like little shorter fences. They put a temporary fence there so they can count home runs. He was hitting it over the fence, and he participated. And he will be good for this team just to be in the locker room. All right? Now, I'm not saying they're going to give him 300 carries, but I still think he's got something left. And I was all for re-signing him last year for $3 million. They didn't feel like they could do that after spending, the 10 on Pollard, and also having to spend money on his dead money. So it was $5.8 million last year, and it's $6 million in dead money this year. And just so everybody understands, they're not paying him that money. They're accounting for money they already had guaranteed him before they released him. So I'm sorry, and I was all for, in the offseason, re-signing him. Bring him back. If you can get him for $2-3 million. So they got him for $2 million guaranteed. And I'm interested to see, because they struggled running the football inside the 10-yard line.
Oh, certainly, Mickey. And like, if that's what his niche is, then I think that's fine. I think it makes me a little more nervous because the by committee approach has not necessarily worked for them with Dak Prescott at any position. And maybe that's not totally on Dak, but when they did this same thing with wide receiver a few years ago, they got halfway through the season and said, that was a bad idea. We got to go get Amari Cooper. So that's where I get concerned.
They didn't have a former Pro Bowl wide receiver on the team at that point, right?
Right, yeah.
And they didn't have guys that had experience either, right?
Right.
So I see that comparison being made out there in the media. It's apples and oranges. It's not the same. And I don't think they're going to spend, a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks for a running back come November. I don't see it. So I think before we overreact, we got to let this thing play out.
Yeah, and Mickey, I understand. And look, I understand that they were not in a position where they could even talk to Derrick Henry, given how much he was going to get, right? So, like, when they got into the veteran running back market, like the Derrick Henrys and those guys, like, they're just not in the salary cap position to do that. Understandably, I think the bigger question is, and I think we know the answer, they clearly kind of showed how they felt about the running back class in the draft when...
Well, now wait. Did any running back get taken in the first round?
No.
How many got taken in the second?
1, 2.
How many?
1, yeah.
One.
When Trey Benson was right at the third, yeah.
How many in the third?
Like,
I think it was 3.
3, yeah.
And the first one went with the second pick, right?
Yeah.
It was Trey Benson.
Yeah.
Corum went a pick before their second third-round pick. So they didn't have a draft pick in the 4th. By the time they got to the 5th, Paul, anybody they would have taken would not have been any better than Rico Dowdle. So do you take a running back just to say we took a running back? And they've been criticized before for not following their board. So they followed their board in the 3rd round and took what was available when their draft pick came up. And there wasn't a running back that they were enthralled with to take in the 3rd round or to move up and spend a pick for 2 picks for 1 running back at that point. So again, sometimes if you have a need and the draft doesn't pan out that well, do you force it? Do you overpay to get a running back? They were going to sign Zeke before the draft ever started, after they had the meeting on the Wednesday before the draft. It wasn't like, oh God, what do? We got to sign Zeke now. They were going to do it before the draft. And the reason they didn't was because on Monday, any free agents you sign that were unrestricted don't count against the formula for compensatory picks next year. And if you notice, there was a bunch of veterans started getting signed on that Monday. So again, it wasn't like they had to react to not drafting a running back. They were already going to do that.
Yeah, no, I get all that. Like, once the 3rd round came and went, I know it was kind of over. But I guess what they felt about the guys who would fit in there was no one, like when they got to that pick where they picked Maris Liafu, there was no one. They're like, well, he might be in the 4th round. We're almost to the end of that. We can go dip down in that. Like, that's how they felt about those guys that went in the 4th round. Like, they weren't gonna. They needed the linebacker. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. I'm not like, again, I think like my point was like they stuck to their board and they said, the guys after like Maris Liafu, it's a need and we have him ranked higher on the board. And guys like Jalen Wright and everybody who went in the 4th round are 4th rounders and we don't have a 4th round pick.
And you would have been overdrafting him if you had a 4th round pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the 3rd. If you had taken him in the 3rd, they would have got criticized for overdrafting. So to me, they followed their board, and the board just didn't work out for a running back. And really, was there a running back in the 5th round that floated your boat?
Oh, gosh, no. No. I mean, like, I agree with you there. Like, once they got past that pick with Liafu, it was like, well, if they had one in the 4th round, then sure, great. Yeah, roll the dice. But, yeah, in the 5th round, like, yeah, you've got Rico Dowdle and Malik Davis and, and a rookie free agent and Snoop Connor, like, Royce Freeman, somebody who may come available halfway through training camp that might be better than all those guys. So, yeah, no, I think that was more prudent to do that.
So, we'll see what happens with Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if he provides you short yardage, quarterback protection, and a good guy in the locker room for a bunch of young guys that are still on this team, I just don't see where it hurts. Now, if he can't run anymore, then that's another story. But I still say he was a product of what was struggling at that time on his final year.
Yeah, Mickey, I think Zeke is low risk, high reward. I guess it did feel a little bit like they were going backwards in a way, but I mean your explanation I can jive with.
Good.
Yeah, you got me. I just, I'm all about progressing forward when it comes to the Cowboys and not looking back, which is something I think they did for a little while where they thought like, it's just going to be 1994 again, just if we do this. And they, instead of thinking about the now, they were thinking about like, we were this close, and it's just always been that way. Mickey, who was your favorite draft pick? Who did you like the most?
Cooper Beebe.
Yeah.
Their ninth pick in the third round. I think that when I start digging into who he is, how he played, and then the things he said in his post-draft interviews, I'm going, here's my favorite guy in the draft right here. Now, he's got to make the transition from guard to center, but it looks like he's built for it. He's got the right nature. He's a very, I think, smart football player. I listened to him, how he even said, when you got to go to center, you got to be able to diagnose things and set the blocking schemes. Well, he claimed he was doing that when he was at guard, studying offensive sets.
Mickey, we had KT Leviston, who played at Midway here and then played right next to him at Kansas State. I asked him about Cooper playing center, and KT said that part of their whole life there at Kansas State was after they were done running through it the way that they were going to play it, they all switched positions, and Cooper Beebe's been taking reps at center for years.
Yeah, but not in games, but in
just
practice.
So he doesn't
that
need
was
to.
my understanding.
He doesn't need to learn how to snap. Like, they're not starting from you put your hand on the ball right here, then you do this thing. He knows how to do that already. Now it's just adjusting the position.
Well, and I heard him talking about how he likes the dirt dudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I heard that term. We used to call it decleating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I looked up some of his highlight stuff, and he's knocking guys on their ass with their feet up in the air. There was one play where he was playing left guard, he pulled to the right, he took on number 97, and I wasn't sure if that was a linebacker or a defensive end, knocked him on the ground, and here comes the safety trying to step over the guy on the ground to make the tackle, and he puts that guy head first on his back. And I'm going, well, now I know what he means about dirting guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think they got something there, especially in the third round. And here's the key thing. He was only the third true guard off the board. Now, when they took the first round pick with Tyler Guyton, he was the 8th tackle taken in the first round. So now I got the 8th best guy at that position. Now, they all might be first round picks. But again, if you're looking at the quarterbacks, do you want the first quarterback or the 10th quarterback taken, or however many were taken in the first round, right? So I think I think that to make that trade down make sense, they had to hit on the third round pick, and I think they have.
Yeah. And look, Mickey, we don't like the guys later on in the draft. That all remains to be seen. I do have one question when it comes to cornerback. Last year they traded for Eric Scott, which was a guy I know that the head coach of the Washington Commanders really liked, and he's not there anymore. So where do you think he fits in Mike Zimmer's defense? Are they bullish on Eric Scott, especially since they did give up a pick last year to move up and get him?
Yeah, I think they have to be, and I think that's one move that we need to see. He never got an opportunity. I don't know if he just wasn't ready, but they certainly kept him on the roster the entire year and had him in. They didn't activate him on game day, not one time. So we got to see there, and this guy's going to have an opportunity, and that's the one reason why they took. I'm going to escape my mind. In the 5th round, Kalen
Carson from Wake Forest.
Carson, yes, Wake Forest. And that guy had a 3rd round grade on him, most of that I saw, and he lasted to him in the 5th. So they needed depth at cornerback. So they're counting on that pick, and I think along with Scott to be able to step up, because if you think about it, the top 3 guys after that, who's your 4th corner? Because if you think about it, Nashawn Wright, they didn't want to play him in the playoff game. They rather play Stephon Gilmore with a bum shoulder that needed surgery 4 days later than to use Nashawn Wright. So, yeah, they needed some depth at the cornerback spot. And between those two guys, they need some guys to be able to step up and at least be the fourth guy. And Carson, from what I kind of deduced, is can play either inside or outside, and they do need somewhat of a backup for Jordan Lewis in the slot. Now, Deron Bland can play it, but you need him now on the outside, and you got Trayvon Diggs coming back, but he's coming back from a torn ACL. So I'm sure they're crossing their fingers that he's, going to come back as Trayvon Diggs and not a facsimile of after the surgery.
Yeah, I guess that injury happened pretty early, so maybe a little bit quicker than, like, say, Michael Gallup came back. They're hoping, I guess, the same thing with with Overshone as well. Mickey, thank you so much. I'm glad that we finally stopped playing phone tag.
Yeah. I didn't want you guys to kick me off the show because I wasn't available.
Oh, no, Mickey, you're grandfathered in. So, like, outside of a Twitter rant that gets you canceled, I think you're good. So
and you know what? I'm almost off of Twitter.
Yeah, see, so you're probably safe. You're probably safe. Mickey
All right,
Spagnola.
talk to you next week.
All
Yeah.
Right, DallasCowboys.com with us there. And, I get all that. I just wish they'd have been able to draft a running back at least. Get a young guy.
You feel better about where they are now?
No, I never feel better. Look, I've been able to transfer all the angst I had about the Red Sox to the Cowboys. Like the Red Sox right now, I'm still in the 8-year window that I give a team to figure themselves out.
Not me. The Rangers better get it together. I'm done. They're done. You just only won a World Series a year ago. Get it together.
Yeah. No, again, but like winning a title for a team that you like, Garrett, I know that you know this about LSU.
Yep.
If it ever happens for Washington, you're going to feel this. I've never done cocaine or heroin or a drug like that, but I would say it's akin to that because it's like something you have to like chase, even though it may not be healthy for you. Sometimes you're like, well, look, you're just not going to get your buzz today, and you're like, no, I'll do anything. I'll do anything, please.
I've heard cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, I mean, so that's what happens when your team wins a title. Like the minute it shoots into your veins, you're like, oh, this is the only thing I can have.
Yeah, you get spoiled very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely can't get spoiled with winning, and that's why these coaches, whatever level, operate with crazy expectations. Like winning's like the goal and the ultimate accomplishment, but then again, it's like also the worst thing that can happen in some cases because then suddenly like that's all that's expected is to win at that level, and probably nobody experienced that better. Although there were others similar than Nick Saban at Alabama, where like every year it's like. You don't make the playoff one time, it's like, oh my God, is the program falling apart? That kind of thing. But yeah, I get the running back dilemma that they had this past week. I think it'll be fine. I'm not overreacting too much to it, but like I said, that as a non-Cowboys fan, the one thing that does make me feel is just very uninspired about like basically rolling back what you were doing 4 years ago. Then again, Zeke's not going to be the main focal point. I mean, he was what? Him and Dak were the biggest stars on that team.
Yeah.
And he's not even, I mean, is he a top 5 star? He's a top 5-ish star probably on the team now, but he's not a bigger star anymore than like a CeeDee Lamb or Micah Parsons or, I mean, we could probably name a couple more guys. But yeah, that's, I mean, we'll see what they do by the time the season rolls around, although the options are very limited at this point, but you don't have to have a star running back in the NFL today, so maybe they're onto something there. I don't know, though. I know there's a lot of people upset by not grabbing a running back, and I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, the top 5. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, presented by Texas Beef House. Intriguing portal decisions, basketball editions. Let's get into it. Number 5, Great Osabor from Utah State. 17.7 points per game, 9.0 rebounds, 2.8 assists. Also can get some blocks done there. He's a forward, big guy. Was supposedly going to go to Kentucky and play for Mark Pope, who's the coach who recruited him to Utah State. However, that is not going to happen now, and he is back in the portal. He's going to help somebody big time, like you see. Points, rebounds, passes the ball really well, and going to the Power 5 level will have an instant impact for Great Osabor, forward of Utah State. Number 4, DJ Wagner, guard at Kentucky. One of the most sought-after players coming out of high school last year, went to play for John Calipari and Kentucky. It's not known where he's committing to go to yet, and look, 9.9 points a game, 1.9 rebounds, and 3.3 assists. Those numbers have to go up. He had declared for the NBA draft, but the NBA just released their list for the upcoming combine. DJ Wagner not on it. So he is headed back to college. We just don't know where now. He is hotly sought after and will be a huge piece of whatever team he joins going forward. Big-time talent, just not big-time production. Injuries, he got suspended for a game. There were a lot of things that happened this year for DJ Wagner that just did not get going. Maybe he winds up at Arkansas with Coach Cal again, but we don't know just yet on DJ Wagner. Number 3, Dylan Mitchell, guard and forward, maybe more of a forward than a guard from Texas. Just under 10 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 1.4 assists. Another one of the most highly touted guys coming out of the class of 2023. Dylan Mitchell played well at times at Texas, including a fantastic game that he played against Texas Tech, but like the Longhorns' entire roster, just never hit their ceiling this year. He is in the portal. The Longhorns have turned over that roster maybe more than anybody else in college basketball, player for player, but we'll see where Dylan Mitchell winds up and what the fit is for him. He's from Tampa. He's going to visit Miami. We'll see what happens in his portal recruitment as he is back in the water. Number 2, Jameer Watkins, forward from FSU. Now, he was already a transfer into Florida State. He was their best player on a very average to slightly below average team for Leonard Hamilton last year in Tallahassee, but almost 16 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists about every single game. He's a player at forward who can help you do a lot. 3-and-D guy, also can pass the ball. That's kind of, diet Scottie Pippen mold that's out there. For Big 12 fans, I would compare him to maybe a Jalen Bridges or KJ Adams that are around, and can see that he will have plenty of pursuers. According to On3, the second most valuable player in the portal right now. And number one that just happened today, Akor, a name so nice you have to say it twice, forward from Samford. 16 points a game, 6 rebounds, 1.8 blocks. This dude was money against Kansas and pushed the Jayhawks to the limit in the NCAA tournament by scoring 23 points. He's super athletic. He scores, he rebounds, blocks shots, passes the ball really well. This is a guy who will have plenty of offers. And again, he got in just under the wire and entered the portal yesterday as it closed. Akor, forward from Sanford. You will know that name if you don't already. He will be very sought after in the portal, and he's just getting started. This is the top 5 on 365 Sports. We're back to wrap it up right now. Hey, look how fast I got over here.
Dang, that's
unbelievable.
Blazing 40 step time.
I mean, seriously. That's like 8 feet.
Actually, we've invented a teleportation machine, and we just haven't unveiled it yet.
No, that's what's going to
glimpse into it.
Yeah, we're still going to do the podcast because you can only teleport so much. You got to have something to do during the day. But that's going to do it for us. Interesting note that Garrett sent though. By the way, I was hoping Dominic Williams would commit by the end of the show, but that hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. I do know that Pete Nako says that LSU feels on the outside right now, and that it's a battle between Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's been seen as to me from pretty much the get-go. I know Oklahoma may be a slight favorite at one point, but I haven't paid as close attention the last couple of days to like exactly what kind of the wording of everything has been. But that's what it appears, as a Oklahoma-Texas battle. So should be a good one, and I bet that's just nothing but good news for Dominic Williams to have those two fighting over you. So good for him.
Absolutely. So tomorrow, I don't really know what we have on the show tomorrow. We'll figure it out when it's tomorrow or later on tonight. So
yeah, I'm sure a lot of the same kind of stuff. I noticed Chris Vanini had a nice article on realignment and just kind of everything going on with that. And he's coming from a place that I'm coming from where there's a lot of like, oh my God, tomorrow all hell breaks loose. And in reality, the only way that we're close to all hell breaking loose, Paul, is if there's a settlement on the horizon, because the court cases aren't wrapping up anytime soon. And so, that's going to continue on. Obviously, more transfer portal stuff, I'm sure. And, kind of the same old, depending on what news otherwise is out there as well. But we'll have the birthday boy back. So, close out the week on a strong note.
Yep, absolutely. All right, sports tonight, right? That's tonight, 10:30.
I believe so.
Gonna do that. I don't know what else to say, but happy birthday, Smokey, one more time. We'll celebrate tomorrow when he's here in the studio. We'll get him a cake. I'm going to tell you this. I don't know if he's going to see this. Amanda has demanded that I get him a bunt, like one of those mini bunt cakes, because she suggested it to him, and he's like, no, I don't know what that is. And,
go for it.
Oh, they're legit.
I love it. Like they're from Nothing Bunt Cakes, which I think is the second best name you could have for a bunt cake store. The only better one, and I'm trademarking this right now, would be called I Like Big Bunts and I Cannot Lie.
I think that's probably taken somewhere.
I
think that's probably taken somewhere. No, but if not, then you go copyright that. I'll go copyright Super 2, and we'll all just start making millions of dollars.
Exactly. I'll put Nothing Bunt right out of business with that one.
Oh, and our teleportation machine as well.
All of that. That's going to do it for us. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.